6:31, we will call the September 5th Planning Commission to order. First order of business is call of order. Second item is Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rolling right in, I'm going to skip roll call since everyone is present. Roll of the Planning Commission is stated on the agenda. Next item, approval of agenda. I believe we have one change. Is that correct, John?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if we could strike number 8B. So this is the concept plan for 11500 Dayton Parkway, CRG The Cubes project. So they were looking for a concept plan to extend outdoor storage. They had a couple of different options. Neither of them are feasible. So they withdrew their application for the concept plan.
All right. Approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next item is consent agenda. The only thing on the consent agenda tonight is the minutes from August 1st.
Yes.
Any changes or corrections to the minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Paul and a second from Darren. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. Next item is open forum. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes for non-agenda items. If there's anyone here for open forum. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 7, council updates.
Okay. So on the 12th, we had the financial quarterly report. There were nothing unexpected in there. We approved the EDA document cleanup. Cannabis moratorium, passed that. That is good, I think, till January. We had a request by 2 nonprofits to waive some of the fees, Magnus and the Heritage Day Festival. That was passed 5-0. Well, that was passed. Against the Heritage Day, we had 2 abstentions. It was passed 3-0. Traffic control on Dayton Parkway. The engineering to do the lights on either side of the interchange was approved. We amended the fee schedule. Rogers had altered their water fees, so we amended the fee schedule accordingly. We approved the engineering on the water trail environmental review. And we approved the engineering for the territorial water extension. That was just to get it more to the west side on territorial. And then on the 27th, we got the hauling concept plan. That mainly talked about the Champlain annexation, and there wasn't anybody okay with that. So it kind of died right there. Our park design contractor came in and explained what was going on with the schedule as to why we had scheduling issues with some of the park updates this fall. We talked about commission term limits, and it was I think the only good argument I heard out of that, or at least argument that everybody agreed with, was it could force us to pull in more candidates But I think we agreed as a body to find other ways to find good candidates.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, the extended business permit, that went through with, I think there was one addition added to the IUP, a limit on the bodies, right, and the number of kids
30.
to 30. So that passed. Magnus was looking for a IUP approval on they have an event center, but I think the deal was it was approved before the emergency response plan was incorporated. The IUP, I don't know if they now automatically have an IUP or it's just that they have a.
Yes, they still, I don't know if they've submitted an emergency response plan as of today.
Okay. And then, the parking lot out here. We approved the low bid for the parking lot, so that should be getting paved this fall yet, right?
Yes.
That was it.
All right, any questions? All right, moving on. Item 8A, zoning map amendment for 11321 Elm Creek Road.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Item before you today is a rezoning application for 11321 Elm Creek Road. The request is specific to rezoning the property from A1 Agriculture District to R1 Single Family Residential. The purpose of the rezoning was the applicants had submitted a building permit for new construction home, and with demolition of the existing home on site, it was found that with that, the impervious surface maximum coverage in the A1 district is 10%. The proposed condition on the site with the new home would be over 14%. Given the layout of the property and the request, the table shows that the property's lot dimensions conform to minimum standards of the R1 district and do not currently conform to any of the lot standards in the A1. Staff is ultimately recommending approval for this request as it meets the intent of the R1 zoning district in terms of lot standards. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions on this one? We do have a public hearing.
Yeah, correct.
I don't have any initial questions.
Yeah, I think I already asked a question to John, but just to bring it to light to other people. But my question was, is there going to be public water and sewer to this site as developed, considering that's generally the spirit of R1, but I'm not hung up on that. But and I guess the answer from John is that water is coming in via an easement, and this is going to be private septic.
Correct.
So when the applicant comes up here, maybe if they're here, I'd just be curious to know if there's a plan or why we can't put sewer in when you get a chance to come up.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. That information was shared with staff at the time of the application submittal, that they would obtain an easement from the easterly property owner to, I guess, put a line in for the water, for city water, and they would subsequently demolish the existing septic system on site and rebuild a new one in the rear yard.
I guess, would the applicant like to come forward and?
Great construction.
Address too, please.
Of
Property or
business.
Where
Business
you,
or home, yeah.
18130 Territorial Road is our
Okay.
office. I live on Berkshire. So I'm a Dayton resident.
Fair enough. All right.
Is there anything you want to say before, other people might have some questions?
No, you just brought up the point of the septic system. There's just no city services on Elm Creek Road. To get to the septic, we'd have to get easements from the current homeowners and in the area and put in an E1 force main. We just got that done. We did one in Champlin just recently. That works real good. But going through private lots is harder than it sounds to get people to give you an easement. So I don't think that is going to work.
So, and this is just, I don't know where the sewer is, but is the sewer to the east where the water is to those new homes that got developed to the east of there?
The water, it comes forward and then it's to the east on Elm Creek Road. It ends on the lot right next door to this property. Sewer is behind.
Got it. So your easement up to the property to the east is along its north or front-facing boundary.
Yeah.
And if you were to get sewer, I get it, you'd have to request that through their back of their property. Got it.
And multiple
Got it.
homeowners, not just one.
Not just one, you'd have to even come in the Nature's Crossing to get it? Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
And that's where it kind of died.
So, if I'm going off memory, the sewer is, I'm going to call it the driveway easement that serves three houses. Is that correct? No.
I'm not quite following.
Oh, that's okay. I'm thinking there's one house between like your project and where the sewer is.
No, there's
On
probably
the backside.
about 3 or 4 where the sewer is, one where the water
Yeah,
is.
they don't follow the same location.
They ain't in the same
areas.
path.
No, yeah, I understand. The water is.
Water's on the front
on the
side,
road.
sewer, we'd have to go to the
To the
rear.
back.
Yep.
And through a property, the adjacent property.
Yeah.
Through the adjacent
Yeah.
property, plus some other property owners to get to the appropriate manhole. Which we'd love to do,
Yeah. Sounds like it's
but
not easy, that's why you're not doing it.
no.
Okay.
Oh, it's easy.
Well, getting people to agree to what you want.
Yes,
isn't always
exactly.
easy.
But we've already done a perk test. It'll take a mound system, typical to Dayton. Everything's good there.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes, I understand that your intent is to build one single-family home on it and
Yep.
keep it more or less the same
Yep.
nature it is today.
Pretty much going right in the same spot the old one's sitting. If you looked at
Tear down, rebuild?
Looked on them 2 surveys, you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tear down, rebuild?
Yep.
Yeah,
Just start from scratch.
yeah.
All right. No other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to open the public hearing at 6:44. If there's anyone here to discuss this project. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I will note that we did have one write-in email to me a couple
Okay.
days ago regarding this application, and it was to the westerly property owner, the neighbor, that they had no issues with the application and that they were just happy to see something happening with the existing home on site.
Perfect. Perfect. I guess any discussion?
I think from my standpoint, the lot size is generally consistent with the R1s that are a couple doors down. Immediately adjacent to it, that's another A1, but it's a much larger lot. You can kind of tell that it's a bit of a holdover. So I think consistency with the general area fits. I think it's a good solution to just rezone it, to get it within conformance. The A1 standards have such a low impervious threshold, I would assume, because they assume the lot sizes are much larger. And this is just a small lot. It's more similar to the R1 lots directly to the east. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't have much issue with it.
I'm good with it.
I'm good with it.
Yeah, good.
All right. I think the only question I have, and I'm looking at the zoning map right now, and it has nothing to do with this property, but the one right behind it with the pool and the cul-de-sac is zoned A1 as well.
I think that's a zoning map error.
It could be a zoning map error, but
Feels like it.
it should be cleaned up, so just something to note.
It's a good catch.
Just something I was
I didn't zoom in far enough to see that.
You referring to the property directly south of this property?
Yeah, south of this property on the cul-de-sac there, so.
Oh, yeah.
My guess is that if that is a part of the Nature's Crossing plat, that would be a zoning map error
Yeah.
and should be corrected.
Sure, it's the only one on the map.
Only one. You found it.
It's the only one in that neighborhood that looks like it, so.
You know, and very briefly, before I make a motion to approve this, I guess I just want to point out, this is an example too, I know we've talked about this before, that we have a lot of little lots zoned A1, and sometimes the A1 actually allows some stuff that's probably not suited for such a small lot too, that we should really be looking at some of these small lots and getting them rezoned, because otherwise someone might come in and say, I want to do this in A1, it's allowed, but, you know, it shouldn't be zoned A1 in the first place, if it's that little.
Yeah.
But would we just change the zoning automatically on it, or do you just
Yeah.
wait for a request to come in on it?
I think you change it if you don't want something on there that is inappropriate for that area, that would be allowed in A1, but wouldn't be allowed in R1, because it's such a small lot.
Keep that thought when we do staff updates.
Yeah, where it's really driving towards is accessory structures.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot
Sure.
of flexibility in A1 with accessory.
And there are some examples of lots in town currently that are an acre or less that are zoned A1 that really limit the types of things that you can do on the property given the 10% maximum impervious
Yeah.
surface, so.
Yep. With that being said, I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning from A1 to R1 on this site.
Second.
We have a motion from Darren and a second from Nick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. This will go to council
September 24th.
24th. Thank you. Next item is new business, item 9A.
You're cursing right now.
Don't, we're an hour ahead, don't let us
No.
jinx that.
Yeah, you're cursing.
You just...
I just
We could do it.
heard that I've got an hour to,
Yeah, take your time, John.
okay.
You might feel like it.
Okay, concept plan for DCM Farm, so this is the address, the one structure, well, there's a few structures, but the house that's on the property is 14800 113th Avenue North. The Planning Commission previously reviewed a concept plan, I'm gonna say it's June. Yeah, because we didn't have a July meeting. So at that time, there were three different options that were presented, and the commission was asked to comment on each one of them. The concept plan has been revised into one, so the purpose tonight is to take a look at this and provide comments individually if there's anything that you would like to change. With the concept plan, there's no formal action, so no approval or denial or recommendation for approval or denial. It's individual comments from commissioners. You have one commissioner that says that you want this, and another commissioner that says, I absolutely don't want that, and it's up to the developer to interpret what that means. So with this project, it's 91 acres, it's 262 lots, I believe. I think in the report I've got it mistyped as 267. So my math is going to be off on this, but it's 59 single-family homes and somewhere around 200 some-ish townhomes or detached townhomes, as well as 11 acres of commercial retail. This is the concept plan that was submitted, and then we have blown up kind of a key here of how many lots of different product type of each size. So, you know, for example, there's 31 villas or townhomes that are 40 feet wide, so that is these that are here. The single-family homes that are listed are shown in blue and green, and it's a little difficult to see, but generally they're going to be adjacent to the project to the north, which is Brayburn Trails East. That's that's being graded currently. So again, kind of the takeaway with this is there's there's a lot of detached townhomes, there's a few single-family homes, there's a whole lot of variety in different housing types. So this is one of the things that the council has mentioned desiring with a development, and you can probably only do that type of variety when you have a large project like this for 91 acres. For orientation, this is Fernbrook, and here's 117th. Dean's Country Manor is in the corner here. Just to kind of reorientate again, the proposal, this is 113th, that leads over to Sundance Golf Course. It is proposed that 113th would be rerouted to the north to connect to 114th. There's 6 existing single-family homes that would stay as it is. Also, this project, and I'm jumping around quite a bit, this project would contribute 1/4 of the park that has been planned for a number of years. So with this project, we'll have 3/4 of the park property. Let's see. As far as staff comments and recommendations, and I'm just going to go through these as bullet points. The first bullet point is berming and landscaping along Fernbrook. So this is the green area. This project will be a planned unit development, so with the PUD, it allows flexibility from the city code. So in this case, there are lots that will be smaller and narrower than what our R3 district would allow. So R3 would be the nearest, most similar zoning district. Also with the PUD, there should be or needs to be some type of a public benefit to allowing these deviations. So that is something that I'm looking for comments from the Planning Commission as far as what is in your opinions, what is the public benefit of this project overall? That justifies the deviations from the code. So other staff comments and recommendations is to have a landscape median along 114th. So the intent here is to have some similarity to the median that's in Rush Creek Parkway. There's planned to be a roundabout at 114th. Staff is also wanting to preserve enough land for a roundabout on 117th, whether it's a roundabout or something else that's to be decided, but this would be the time to at least gain the extra right-of-way that is needed. Let's see. For alignment of intersections, generally speaking, the street that's coming out of Sundance, I believe it's Sundance Woods versus Sundance Greens. Sundance Greens should intersect with the new street that's going to DCM Farms, as well as spacing guidelines between intersections is 660 linear feet, whereas this intersection would be too close to that. So staff is recommending that this intersection be closed off or moved west, and then this to be a continuous street here. Other suggestions is, I should back up a little bit. So one of the discussions that came out of the previous concept plan was the ability of having an alleyway that would back up against the 6 homes. An alleyway would allow these homeowners the ability or the option of moving their driveway off of Fernbrook down the alleyway. The thought with that is Fernbrook is going to get busier over time and more difficult to back out on. So with the concept plan right now is proposed to be a trail. So generally speaking, our trails are 10 feet wide. An alleyway is 12 feet paved and 16 feet of right-of-way, so it's not much different than a trail. What else do we have here? Staff is suggesting that the retail that's along 114th be more pedestrian-oriented versus auto-oriented, so trying to make it, I'm going to call, say, more small-town-ish and less suburban-ish, or car-oriented suburban-ish. As well as creating some type of, I'm referring to this as iconic signage or public sculpture, something that refers to, being that this project is DCM Farms, that it refers to the rural or the agricultural heritage that is the site. Continuing on that is having residential design standards as well as commercial design standards that draw on the some type of agricultural character. In the packet, there were a couple of elevation drawings of, and I believe these were the 40-foot townhomes that refer. It's hard to see on here. But I think the intent is that it looks more like a smaller farmhouse versus the typical larger suburban home. So with these are backloaded homes or backloaded garages, and so you have the house that faces the street and the garage that faces the alleyway. So that is, I try to keep this to like a 1-minute summary, and I'm pretty sure I'm over my 1 minute. But the applicant is here as well as some of the neighboring, or one of the neighboring residents. So with the concept plan, the original concept plan, that was a public hearing, so it would be up to the chair if you'd like to allow additional public comments.
Any questions for staff? I guess I have one, John, on the movement of the roadway. The concern, obviously your concern, the staff's concern was the spacing off of Fernbrook.
Yeah, for the 660, yeah, so with this roadway here.
Is that concern still there if there's a boulevard that does not allow people to take a left
turn lane?
Yeah, if it's a right in, right out.
It's less so. I would say then it's more of a question of, is there a need for stacking, or is there slowdown? Does the right-hand turn movement on, from 114th to here slow the traffic that's turning right? And I couldn't answer that, but I have to think that it'd be okay.
And then the other comment I have, and just making sure we address it, everything in red up there is not part of this project. That's a separate project.
Up here?
Yes.
Correct. So this
that's
is
locked
already,
in.
This is locked in.
Just for clarity of making comments on things. So.
As far as the project area too, is the area to the directly west of Dean's Country Manor part of this? I know, or is that part of the original plat? And they're going to amend it if this goes through, or do you know? Or?
So that is part of Sundance, so it's not part of this. I would have to imagine, depending on what you do with commercial, you may end up changing lot lines.
Exactly, that would be the plan if the road was vacated.
Oh, Tom, if you could come up.
Yeah, why don't you come up, and might be a better question.
Yeah, I guess along those lines, Tom, is what was originally planned there, too.
And Tom, if you could
Tom Dehn, 11261 Fernbrook Lane, Dayton. So initially, the reason we haven't, when we went through on Sundance Greens in our first, the preliminary plat approval, it was asked to leave that open for a potential commercial area. That's why we don't have any townhomes there. So that was the, I think it was probably the council's guidance back in 2000, probably 18 when we started, 19. So, because I know there was discussions way back, about having a Fernbrook 113th, intersection improvement, and talking in the county, it was, that they wanted to locate it up to 114th. So it's just kind of what really happened in that area. So,
and just to make sure John has it too, is the 11.2 acres of commercial includes the stuff then behind Dean Country Manor.
It does include that. I think we have 10 acres new.
10 new and one,
or even maybe 8.5. Maybe it's only even 8.5 to 9. And there's, say 2.5 that is was already currently in that Sundance Greens. So as you look, we had too many Sundances there. It gets confusing. So that's why we changed it. We first had it named something else, Sundance, and it's like, And I guess, really from my, changing the roads, if, I can see the point. I don't know if we thought about it, so I don't have any issues with, reconfiguring the road. I do know if we took the westerly road, there's a large berm, and maybe it'd make sense to move that, adjust that road, being down in Sundance Greens, over a little bit to the east, and pick up maybe not, I don't know, so,
Yeah, the berm on the south side of 113th.
yeah.
Yeah.
Although it's not directly a road or intersection, John, it's my recommendation too that the main entrance to the commercial line up with that road going north.
Okay.
So right now they're staggered because that main entrance to the commercial is gonna be like a four-way intersection. That's why they get it better if it lines up with the road, especially if we have to put some turning lanes in.
Okay.
And I think, probably just to share on the whole thought of the concept first, if I just talked to the commercial, is, it's pretty basic now. It's just seeing if that area, I think at the first concept meetings, maybe here and at the council, there was some discussion, some very favorable, some maybe questioned it. I understand that it would need a lot of, architectural review, design review, so, and I don't have anything initially planned for that yet, try to market or anything. The homes would be different. We'd intend to start that, right away. But, if it's proved, we would obviously actively then try to get some businesses in there. I know I spoke to one daycare, would like to look at it. And I do think, it maybe seems like there was some question to me. It just seems like, a gas station, convenience store, nice one that provides some other, take a Quick Trip, take one of the other, brands, I would say, but just something to have everybody in the neighborhood. I know Maple Grove, some comment wasn't that far, but really you're crossing 610. You were to get to, to a gas station. I think there's, as the city grows, and really it's all it's had is Braintree. It really hasn't, had an improvement in a long time, so. But I think I would see those as two anchors. And I'm good. I think John and I, we haven't changed it. John, has had some, I don't know, just opinion and discuss about, trying to keep along the road, maybe no parking and all the parking's in the back, make it look more street front. And to be honest, credit to him, he put maybe more thought into it. I wouldn't disagree, right, to make it look good and keep all the parking behind.
I think the opposite.
Yeah.
When I drive, my example is when you drive down Zane off of 610.
Yeah.
When you first go north, all you're looking at is the back doors of retail buildings because all the front doors then have to face the other way.
Yeah.
And I guess that'd be my suggestion with the commercial is that you line the buildings more along the west and south and have a centralized parking area, not buildings right in the middle.
Yep. Yep.
And you have an REA, reciprocal easement agreement with shared parking and maintenance for the parking lot. I still think, Tom, from my opinion, is that, because I did the math on your square footage, and I get it, it's probably going to change because it looks like it's underparked. But there's 80,000 square feet of commercial. Seems like a lot.
Yeah.
My concern is that if we go down a path of approving a plat, is that someday you're going to have to come back and now we can't figure out how efficiently to use the land if we just approve too much off the get.
Yep. And I would say conceptually, if, hey, just say it's commercial, I'll be honest, the engineer just threw some buildings there. If it thinks like, hey, that area would be, that's really a discussion that makes sense for commercial, then I think at least building wise, parking, you're exactly right. We didn't figure parking, estimated a pond size. You may find out that half of those, those buildings can go, you know? So, I look and agree with you there. I do think if we did, however you guys want to do it, parking in the front, rear, I do think that along the parkway can't be back doors, right? It needs to be,
Yeah.
it needs to be a
And that's the challenge, is
streetscape there.
and most commercial users don't want two front doors.
Yep.
So
Right.
you gotta pick how you want it.
Yep. So
I
very
guess
true.
I'd rather see a landscape boulevard
Yep.
that kind of shields a little bit of the parking, but then when you drive in, you see where all your users are, you
Yeah.
park, you have one front door, and
But I think if I general from a high level of concept, if that makes sense, I could definitely fine tune that.
the other suggestion with the commercial is the site right behind Dean's Country Manor to the west.
Yeah.
Even when you look at the surrounding uses, I'm not saying it's necessarily a feasible use today, but it seems like a great multifamily site. Like a 3-story building, kind of, so it's not too tall. But that's where you could put a little density, is right there, and then that would cut, and it's all walkable to whatever commercial
Yeah.
does go in there.
Yeah, I even wondered, is there anywhere, I just don't think the area's urban enough where you had some shops down and living space above, you know? But I think, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I just don't, there was, like I said, initially, even more of the apartment side, I had nobody interested, but I just think there was a lot of neighborhood opposition to it, so. But
I agree with you in that density right there in lieu of commercial would be good. I agree with that 100%. I'd like to maybe see some more single-family lots then. With that gift of density there. So maybe some more 65s or a couple more 75s.
And I think where we went on, and kind of going back just to the thought process, so, you know, we had the 65 option, right? And I'm not gonna disagree that, you know, a bunch of townhomes are, once you put a lot of them together, are attractive. And so I think that's where we looked at alley loading, the piece, you know, say, up off, you know, just south of 117th would get some good streetscape, and that came up at one of the council meetings. I forgot which council member brought up spots, so I really wasn't thinking that. And so I do look a little bit of I get the larger lots, and another option could be to do it all in 65s. But it seems like there's been at least, not even maybe, you know, not me, is just asking for some more density on this side. And I thought it gave a different product. And then if you were to look at the Brayburn piece, right, I'm kind of looking at absorption and trying to not have another product that just totally competes with it. I'm not saying it won't fill, but it's definitely open for discussion. I do think just, I hadn't seen the street, you know, curving over where we'd eliminate the one. I would say instead of that cul-de-sac, and if that street comes through, then just looking at initially, those are all 65s coming through, not splitting.
You're talking about, just so we're on the same page,
So right here, so this piece here.
Yep.
This road would take 65 and bring them all right to here.
yeah, if you were to do that, I would agree 100% that those need to be all 65-foot lots to the north. That's
It's all the
only
same
way
on
in.
the street. and-
If it's the only way in, you can't have density.
Yeah. And like, I think, I don't know if necessarily last time here I mentioned, but, you know, like if you go just south of Rush Creek Parkway, there's, all those single-family homes on the south are only on 50-foot wide lots. It was when we went through on the initial Sundance greens to keep the woods up in the southwest corner. You know, I just said, you know, is there an option we could go through and cut all the trees down? Or if we left that, could I get, you know, I didn't get all the density back, but I got, you know, a portion of it back by going to smaller lots. And so all I would just share is everybody to look. I think they're decent looking lots and offer some variety, but, you know, you guys may not disagree. You may disagree, excuse me.
Yeah, I think the villa lot's kind of right in the middle. It's just the heart of the development. I almost feel like that should be more along the busier roads. I know you do have that directly on the north side of 113th, but it feels like smashing those villa lots right into the middle. Those could be some prime 65 lots. And I know you don't want to compete with the other ones, but look at how many 65-foot lots are selling out there. I mean, between Sundance Woods and Brayburn Trails and the Pulte and Maple Grove has got them.
Well, and especially the thing is I think, even if you went to the narrow lots, the one thing nice about this, from the association dues and having just the insurance and all those common buildings, I mean, a resident can buy a $50,000, $60,000 house, more value in house, and by the time your association dues are less, really have about the same house, same payment.
It's kind of a little bit along Nick's line item, but one thing that went through my head, Tom, so maybe you can just explain if there was some logic, but why the 65-foot lots sandwiched between all the villas directly behind the existing single-family homes?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a thought process there, like maybe you're trying to lessen the impact on the single-family homes? I didn't know exactly.
As we had discussions with the neighborhood,
Okay.
I think yes, they were looking for less density behind them.
I guess I'd be looking for a little feedback from the engineers in the room, but I guess I'm struggling with the thought. I'm struggling with the alley because I just don't think it's that functional. Like, I get it, it might be a kind of a solution, but it's not a very functional solution.
The alley get adjacent to the homes? there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I get the reason for it. I just don't know how functional that really is going to be. So say they could renovate the homes and flip the garages.
Which
Is
a
that
lot of them
really
said they
functional?
couldn't.
Yeah, right. Is that even functional, I guess
Yeah.
is my question.
I think that's more of an architecture question. The alley behind those houses, from an engineering standpoint, is going to get those accesses potentially off of Fernbrook. I don't know if the county can demand those accesses come off Fernbrook. So in my mind, I feel like the alley's going to go in, but everybody's going to keep using their driveway off.
Correct.
So, and I think this is.
Because I don't think the county can demand it.
And I think, so as we've met, we can discuss, we're not really talking putting the alley in currently. It's, maybe the roundabout in there right now, that's gonna slow, at a roundabout, nobody's passing their house at 65, right? But there was a wish for sewer, and at the time, we just talked and said, I just need to give you a stub, right? Because you never know what's gonna happen. I know most of those lots are small and on their second site. There's some drainage issues, so we have to address with storm sewer back there. But I think as it went from the first meeting in that time, most of the homeowners would like the ability to hook up. So the thought is sewer hooked up to them, water currently, but the alley is there as an option, right? I need to leave an easement, and most of the alley would go onto their existing properties, if they decide to build it. Everybody's garage, I did look, everybody's garage is on the north side of the house, and there has no home behind it. So you could put it, you got to take and change your garage door. So, and I'm going to ask Lee, I don't want to misspeak for everybody. I think if the traffic slows down, everybody's going to leave their driveway as is. It's just an added expense. But at least off of the parkway, I'm giving an easement today before it gets developed. So all of a sudden, let's say 10 years they want to do it, and now it's a whole HOA vote, and it's just a lot more difficulty. And
So the alley wouldn't get constructed?
No.
It's an alley, it's an easement
It's reserving.
Yeah, but
with a trail in today's.
But the trail does run behind and the lots that we have, so all the homeowners don't have to go out on Fernbrook. They can walk in their backyard, get the trail, and stay off the busy road.
I was gonna say, the two things I like about this, and I with the alleyway, is if the homes ever do, I mean, we just had one come in earlier tonight of a tear down and rebuild. That's something where we would probably want to look at this and consider it, and now we're giving that person an option.
But what if it's the middle house?
That's where I was going, is if the other thing this allows is, we're looking, you guys were just talking about the density down on the, behind Dehn's, and that parcel right there on Fernbrook is almost the same size as those two red parcels. And this allows for maybe some future multi-family density right there with an access point that's not on Fernbrook.
Yeah, you're gonna have right in, right out, right there
Yeah.
at that. And I think the reason we didn't, there was discussion, well, do you put the street through, right? Well, then everybody's gonna go on it, traffic,
Right.
right? And they just could keep it where it's just their homes. If anything, it's minimized traffic.
Right. I'm gonna walk up here, Tom, so I think it's easier to demonstrate, but the one thing I was thinking about this afternoon, I was looking at it, but if here's the commercial access, and let's just say that's meeting the 660 feet, so you gotta move the road over here
Yeah.
anyway, is if this road kind of looped around and then came back up, you could put, you don't have to build the road, but put an easement in so we can access the alley in the middle. And obviously with a road like this becomes more of a townhome development to work with the abnormal shapes now. But then you still have a good road getting up into what you put up here.
Personally, I think that does make some sense to it.
And then what happened too is what Peter said is, let's just say 10 years from now, multifamily developments going through the roof, and some developer approaches all these homeowners that are just done and want to be done with Fernbrook. It's what's going to maximize the value of their land. What's going to maximize the value of their property is a combination of land and home. But if you have a road stubbed in the middle, now that could become multifamily someday if someone wanted to do that and they wanted to sell.
You could drop a manhole, sanitary manhole right there in the middle of it too, and those folks would have the ability to hook up.
And we haven't even talked about when Hennepin County, let's just say Hennepin County expands Fernbrook.
Yeah.
These people might get taken
get
out on
bought.
top of it. And I like the idea of the alley as a savior, but that can also be used against them.
Yeah.
And I want to think about the property owners.
Yeah. Well,
Like
I
if you
don't-
go through eminent domain, they'll use that against them. Oh, you still got access, you got an alley. It's like, well, no.
And it really is only gonna be, as we talked about it, through the parkway and that open space. Then it needs the person to the far south to agree, right, to go
Right.
through. I would actually probably, could you take right in and right out? The only thing I'd hate to have is if I take a 50-foot area in between those lots, now I'm losing a lot.
You lost a lot, yep.
I'm not a fan of the right in, right out because of the density in the northeast corner of the development. Like I want that traffic in those
No,
homes.
I'm just talking for the existing homes down the road.
Oh, the alley.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it and coming back and maybe even coming back to commercial, like you said, we align the road. Maybe the commercial has to get realigned and everything has to go up to the intersection and back in, right? As you look at it. I think either option is definitely good discussion points, and I can see the positives of it. So that's why it's good to have the feedback. Yeah, I'm not set, no, that street needs to go there.
Have you thought at all, just more out of a curiosity, but phasing of this?
Yes, and so one of the reasons so you asked about mixing the villas, we have villas down here. I'm probably looking at 2 national builders in just versus 1, right? So they can get a little bit of separation in their product. So, but I would say, probably phasing of, everybody's pretty, right now, the thought is everybody's fairly aggressive into a 2-year max. phasing.
There's low lot inventories.
Yep. I mean, I think the anticipation of interest coming down, there's hope. I guess nothing doesn't mean it's gonna happen, right? The houses are still expensive, so on affordability, but.
So up in the northeast corner, I guess I would encourage members of the council, PC, that might be approving this, to make sure you go try to get a chance to look at some 40-foot lot developments that maybe form a better opinion. Ramsey Town Center has a bunch of them. I won't call them good or bad, but it's very dense product, and you don't really know what it looks like until you look at it. It's pretty dense. Like, when I've appraised them a couple times, I've always asked my head is, why didn't they just make these row townhomes? Because that's all they are, but there's 10 feet of, basically you get more windows, so maybe you have a little more flexibility with your interior designs, but there's still just 10 feet
And-
between the buildings.
And I think the other is where we're looking at a streetscape. So you take a town, right, 4 or 6 units, it's all the same color, right? Now, you got every house with a different house, a little different. You have 4 of those that really are running the same front face architecture. and now you can split it up a little more. I mean, still, they're gonna be similar. I think that was our thought, is, hey, does it make sense to have some variety versus, but it's not as, say, effective as a townhome
No.
for density.
And even from a cost standpoint,
Yeah.
I mean, those are more expensive than townhomes because
Yeah.
you have more material, but,
Yeah.
and you're getting the same square footage.
I think if you are gonna do it though, this would be the spot.
Yeah.
If you were gonna do it. I have seen the 40 foots, I have similar thought to you. It's like, wow.
I'm not overly impressed, but
Yeah,
I
well,
get
there's
it.
some
Some
in-
people
some
want
in-
it.
There's some in Ramsey, right? I know that their architecture isn't very good.
No, they're
you know?
front-loaded, not alley-loaded.
I would tell you on this, and the plans that you saw, we could get a little larger. MI is the one that's interested in that, and, you know, they're willing, so this whole project, one of the things will do is go four-sided LP, just not front. And
On the whole-
On the whole project, townhomes, villas, whatever,
Everything we're looking at.
everything you're looking at.
I think I would support that a lot. The Sundance Woods has that, and the look and feel of the development is far and away when you have the four-sided LP than having three sides of vinyl.
Something to note for
Love
the
it.
PUD, John, if it's gonna be all
Yeah.
as a benefit.
What does that do to the price?
And it's gonna add probably about, so like the villa homes, it is gonna add probably $13,000 to them. It is spendy, but if you, I think
you get all of that resale back.
I think it's the resale, I think you get down the road, right? So if you use, like the diamond coat, it's a 30-year, I mean, that paint lasts longer than vinyl, but even if you have to paint it, right, it's
Easy.
It's got a nicer row on the wall, right? You can see any of the vinyls, they're just gonna move, right? That's a part of it. And so, you'll notice in a lot of the projects that, you know, I've done from Nature's Crossing to over here, you know, I think it adds a lot.
I really like the look of it. One of the things, just one of the problems I've had with it, just because we've been there 10 years now, or almost, they didn't paint all the cuts like they're supposed to.
Yep.
And so you get mold growing in them and stuff, so just when you're working with the builder, make sure they're aware of issues of subcontractors.
Yeah, the other payback too on the cost is usually the HOA insurance is cheaper and your overall replacement reserves go down because it
I mean,
lasts longer.
hail, most of the time, right, the hail, they're, you know, is
Yep.
much more durable. than
You
a
might just need a
hailstorm.
repaint.
What's that?
Sometimes you just need a repaint
Yes,
if it really
exactly.
gets blasted with the
Yes,
hail.
right.
Way cheaper than rewrapping the house.
So, but I mean, I'll look, and I don't want to pick on it, but if you go down 117th, right, some of the houses got LP in the front and the back, and the sides are vinyl, and I'm like, at that rate, why aren't you just taking all four sides, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
There was a major point of decision for us when we built in Sundance Woods that we picked that development because it was LP all around.
Yep.
and I'm not gonna lie, when I'm working, trying to see the interest, that's a, you know, yeah, I know you do need to have it. you
The
know?
look and feel of the neighborhood is drastically different than having vinyl.
Well, and when we were looking at a neighborhood in Corcoran that was Lennar built. That was only LP on the front.
And it does help those nationals, I think, punch with some of the more custom builders.
Yep.
I think Lennar does a better job blending in with a Hanson when they're able or forced to do LP on four sides, because if you give them the option, they will just do it on the front.
Yeah, so my only other feedback on the residential side, Tom, is Nick kind of mentioned this too, but, so the the southwest corner of the development is all 50 and 55 foot wide lots. I think those well, first of all, to clarify, what's immediately to the west? Is that 65 foot lots?
I was wondering that too.
Now to the west is yes, to the,
In the Sundance Greens.
yeah, I think you're in the southwest corner or northeast. Southwest is down here, right next
Yep.
to Sundance.
Yep, southwest corner.
So, to be honest with you, as we go through and plat, I probably would ask for a change here.
Oh, because that hasn't got it. That's all
That
that was
hasn't got
platted.
it, but if you see now, we're on our 11th edition, so we're starting right now to redesign the golf course. Next year, it'll probably take us to get our greens redesigned here, sorry. And this is probably a 2026 project. But I think here, as we've seen, just the golf course, just seems to have a lot of activity and interest in some things we can do there, that we might take and loop this street around and leave this as parking, because some of the nights right now, we're out of parking. So.
Right adjacent to the pond, I think parking right there gives you a good buffer.
Yep, and initially, from our preliminary plat, these buildings come down. We had them designed here because the street comes out there. But if we did this, we kind of see this going as all villas.
You would see that.
Yeah, and so we've had tremendous interest. The reason we have villas down here is, so we went to Sundance 9, we brought MI in. They already have that. They're dying to get lots going in the 11th and sold. Their interest is, so they're like, we already see we need a spot here.
And so that kind of changes a little bit what I was going to suggest, I guess, because if it's going to be villas there, then that's fine. I guess the one thing I'm thinking of is I know that maybe the feedback is more density, and maybe the council's there today. But I know that we also redid the code to not have too many villa lots, I guess is what I'm trying.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong in this circumstance, but I just want you to be conscious of that, of thinking of where could be places that you take out villa lots. And I agree with what Nick said around that pond, and I was also thinking that southwest corner. But if your bigger plan is villas there too, it does seem like, I'm a fan of villa lots for having some variety in town. And if they get concentrated, they get concentrated. I don't want too many of them, but.
I mean, I think if based on the discussion, if there was a spot that we had to put 65s in, wanted more, I would ask for that in that center.
Yeah, that's right. I think it'd be best.
Yeah. And maybe even the section to the left of the center, if and then the villas tie into the other villa development.
Yeah, you're talking this area here?
Correct.
Yeah. And if you do look, these because of the street, the setbacks are pretty far off the 113th. That you burn them, it could be some nice backyards. There's no doubt about that.
Speaking of backyards, staff had mentioned the rear yard setback and versus the front yard setback. On the fresh of your brain.
Sure, so, and I'm going to refer to the R3 district, zoning district. So the front yard setbacks are, and Hayden, you're going to have to correct me, it's 20 feet for the front porch, 25 for the living area, and 30 for the garage. And so, granted with the concept plan, these are just blocks. So where the garage or porch is undetermined. But on the concept plan, it's suggesting a 25-foot setback, front yard setback for, I don't know if that'd be the porch or the house, but the thought is, that what is the intent of the front yard? It's more of a buffer between the public area of the street or the sidewalk and the private area of the house. If these yards are going to be small, does it make sense to have small to begin with, to have a smaller front yard in exchange for a bigger backyard? So you move the house, say 5 feet forward towards the street, and you get 5 feet more backyard.
I believe Sundance Greens is all currently 25 in the PUD.
I think we need to also balance the amount of driveway I think making sure the driveway is the appropriate length is more important than the
Sure you can
backyard
park
for a
up in
villa lot. For a villa lot.
That was the intent, I think, of that change.
Yeah.
Was driveways seem
And
to
so,
be getting
now, I don't
shorter.
know if 30 feet's the answer like our
Right.
code says for driveway setback, but I think it's something the applicant should be aware of talking to your builders is, don't forget that criteria because.
I get it, if you have a big truck, right, well, number one, they probably don't fit in the garage, but you have 22 feet fitting in a 25-foot driveway, right? But we're fine, with the villas, a lot of those, there's a lot of the people that they don't really even, they just got a couple cars, they don't need a lawnmower, they don't need a snow blower, any of that anymore. But I sure can
Yeah, a visitor that might have a truck or something like that, and especially the ones that have sidewalk on that side of the road.
That's-
Making sure
And
that,
it
you know,
was
you can
from,
park the truck there.
Right away, right? Or is it from?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't
yes,
think it was
but
from the street because of the sidewalk.
25 feet from the right of way. So if you have, say 10 feet between the street and the edge of the right of way, you don't have a sidewalk that's 10.
It's plenty of room.
Now you can get a 4 cars in the driveway instead of 2.
Yeah.
But still, wouldn't you, but I mean, I would still think on all of them, from the property line, you're 25 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, minimum. You know, so you still would have that right away on top of it, but I get it on the sidewalk,
You
know.
lose half of it.
I know a few folks were saying that they think that's too much commercial. I actually think that feels right. Depending on what goes in there and what the uses are. I mean, a daycare doesn't have parking at night, a restaurant does. Daycare doesn't have parking because most of the patrons
Yeah,
are
just to be
drop off.
clear,
I mean,
yeah, to be clear, Peter, I'm
Yeah.
not too much like, I'm more too much as I don't think the market can bear it. And so we're gonna be coming back, looking at this, coming up with a different plan use after he does half of it. That's my concern.
well, and so the concept plan, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the concept plan is the 8 acres and the 2 other acres would have to come through a different process. And so that's my understanding.
That seems to be right, but I would look this that.
Well, I mean, so in the staff report, I'm referring to the 11 acres, that includes, parking, streets, stormwater pond, so.
Yeah, Peter was referring to the acres behind Dean Country.
Yeah,
Is that when and if that became something, that would be a separate plan? I do think it's worthwhile to provide feedback in the
Yeah.
bigger picture, but
I mean,
And is that the spot you're thinking would be better for the density?
the most,
That's what
I
I
think,
leave the commercial
especially because it abuts
increase.
the pond, it abuts townhomes, there's a nice buffer with the
Yeah, I mean,
stormwater pond between the townhomes.
The ponds there, I'm not disagreeing, so I would say, yeah, I mean, initially it was just asked to leave it, right? So it's been sitting there,
Yep.
and, that whole thing needs to get cleaned
Yep.
up, and need to get there.
And, maybe when you
Sure.
redesign these buildings, there's less than 80,000 square feet of
Yeah.
commercial. I
Yeah.
guess that's my concern, and my message to you is that I'm concerned that if you plan that much square feet of commercial, is that 7 years from now, it's gonna be half full, and you're gonna be like, we need to do something else, and then we have to figure out a different use for the land that's not gonna be as efficient as we figured it out today.
Yeah. I'll spend some better time, right? And if I'm right, I'm hearing maybe, no, not totally commercial, but just kind of get a little more detail of what we're presenting.
Yeah, you
agree.
think of the Noble Parkway off of Zane too as an example. You've got the gas station and the strip center.
Yeah.
And you think about how long, and that strip center struggles.
Yeah.
It really does. And then you look at where CVS is, they struggled to fill that up forever with all the rooftops. That's what I'm trying to tell you is that if you can find the commercial user, I guess I'm more concerned about the speculative platting and how
Yeah.
that impacts us trying to make an efficient use of the land.
Yeah.
If you could find that user, I could change my opinion really
Yeah.
quick. If you had a user and said, this is what we're doing, we're taking it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
well, and that's kind of where I was getting, Darren, was the more land we have available for it, we may get not necessarily an anchor store or an anchor, but someone that's coming in and they're gonna drive others to want to be
I'd be
there.
shocked. It's all about traffic.
Yeah.
It's all about traffic. And
And I would be open to, if we let
Just not seeing
that
it.
sit, just see if the other piece is filled. And then if it didn't, we come back, or we just don't worry about it, put a small piece where it leaves just a couple of the items, and we go residential there.
Yeah, I think what helps us, because you're gonna ask us to rezone it, put a PUD on it, make sure it's commercials allowed there, right? What helps us is understanding, well, if commercial didn't fit, what's your other plan, and how is that gonna fit to convince us that it's an efficient use of the land?
Okay.
Versus us just reacting and throwing something together that,
So I think maybe I'll work on some type of residential,
yeah, it could be
density there.
townhomes, could be, yeah.
Yep, and just say, this is what we do in case it didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would help.
Yep.
but along with that discussion, we talked about adding some 65s because we'd have some density there. You know, so we really almost have to answer that question now in that I'd like to see some more 65s in there. And if that means we need some more density, that's probably the spot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really for me.
I
My
think we
number
should
one
have
thing
some
is
more-
I want more 65s, and a way to get it is more density. And a way to get more density is lose the commercial there and go apartment or something higher density.
What is the density right now?
Well, that's a good point, yeah. Here.
Well, 260 and 90.
You
Well,
think
so really not 90, because you gotta take out the commercial. So take out 10.
If you're looking for an
80.
accurate number, we don't have one.
269 divided by 8.
It's 76 and
They had a ballpark one last time.
So it's like 3 1/4 to
80,
3.4 units an acre.
And that, yeah, you aren't even taking out a lot of the little bits, right? So,
But I will tell you, remember the last time, all the residents were definitely not wanting density in apartments, you know?
Yeah, it's a good spot for it though, given the other residential use further to the west is more higher density.
And that's why I was.
Close to, we got the pond on the south side, close to Fernbrook. You know, it's gonna be, on the north, we'll have heavy commercial if this is how it goes. It just feels like that's where it would go. If anywhere, that's where it would be.
But, I do think though there is some commercial, because, you know, realistically, commercial, you know, if the city ever gets their center square, I mean, face it, that's a long time out. There's a lot of houses that gotta get built before that gets out there.
Yeah, that's why I do think it can handle commercial. I just think you've got too much, and that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be service industry kind of stuff too. I mean, you got the daycare in there. It could be a doggy daycare. Could, you know, you get the bank. I mean, it's, you know, I think there's a lot of different uses that could serve the community that could thrive there.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I wasn't maybe necessarily as much as retail, like
Yeah.
some in Champlin. Is it, you know, is it a hair salon, right? You got a lot of new people there. You know, I don't see anything medical because you got all that in Maple Grove, right?
Yeah.
Not even a urgent care, but to me, I thought.
I could see a clinic, a small, like dental, when you say medical.
Like like
dental,
a
chiropractor.
standalone.
Yep.
Yeah, not
Dental
a medical clinic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, yep. And so from that, daycare, you know, I think, you know, some people mention a coffee shop. I don't know if you got the traffic to do that. You know, I get it, you got all the neighborhood.
With the daycare, you might.
Yeah, right, because you're in and out.
Let's Quick Trip right there, though. It's gonna-
Yeah.
Well, if it is, yeah, right.
Tom, to help you put the square footage in perspective, is the Park Place Promenade in Brooklyn Park, so Zane, where the Cub Food. So
Yep.
Cub Foods anchored strip centers.
Yep,
If you take out Cub Foods, the strip center, L strip center along the one side, and the strip center across the street, that's 66,000 square feet.
okay.
And so you think about all those users you just named. We've got the pizza joints, the salons.
There's a Jimmy
And
John's
just think of
over there,
all the
yeah.
rooftops. That's where I'm concerned that it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, it feels like a lot.
On the flip side, if you're not in a hurry, like you said, you can
Yeah,
let it, like, just not fill it and
Yeah.
have a plan A and a plan B. Plan A, and here's plan B is houses or an apartment. And I appreciate that the neighbors don't want, you know, that there was some concern about having high-density apartments, but we need them. I mean, that's just the reality. And it does feel like that is responding to their concern about having them, like, it's still there, but not necessarily not in your backyard, so to speak. There is the buffer and all those kind of things. So I do think it's necessary, and that would be a good alternative. I'm a fan of townhomes because I'm the extremes. We lived in a townhome for 16 years where I only had one side that had windows, and now I live on 18 acres and I don't. And so I have I either want all or nothing. I don't like that middle ground,
You're
personally.
gonna be packed in.
well, I mean,
If I'm gonna, if I'm,
65-foot lot,
no,
I'm saying.
not at all. If I'm gonna be packed in, pack me in. I don't want to do yard work. Like if I'm not gonna have privacy in a yard, then don't waste my time having to maintain this tiny little strip that doesn't actually give me anything except for work to do or up my my dues or whatever. So it's like if I'm gonna be packed in, then just pack me in.
there's a lot of people, right? They work, they go in,
Yeah.
they're not home, they just sleep and leave.
And I gotta say, sometimes, particularly winter, man, was that nice when I didn't have to worry about plowing, I didn't have to worry about mowing my lawn, and now I do. So like, I'm kind of, if you're gonna pack them in, just pack them in. And if you want a yard, then you want a yard. And maybe there are people in the middle who like a tiny bit of a yard. I do know, if you have a dog, you want to have a backyard somewhere they can go to the bath,
Yeah.
So like I get that, but I am a fan of the variety. I like the variety. I think different people like different things. My only comment is not really so much for you, but for staff and their recommendations on the farm-themed architectural design. Nothing fills me with more rage than when I drive by a place that used to be a horse property and they got rid of all the horses, but they keep the horse theme.
Yeah.
And it's called Hackamore Trail and they have little horses here and I'm like, no, you got rid of the only thing that mattered. Don't keep the name. So I actually, that fills me with rage. So don't do that. If you got rid of the farm, then you got rid of the farm. Now you're a subdivision.
And I personally, I mean, I can look at it, right, I was a farmer, right?
Yeah.
And so, and someday, face it, it's not gonna be rural town. But I do think the architecture, is it maybe all brick, or is it, I mean, something just a lot.
I want it to be pretty.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be pretty, but that just like I said, anytime I drive by a place that used to have horses and they kept the horse theme but got rid of the only thing that mattered, which was the horses, it does make me, it literally fills me with rage. I get angry every time I drive through like that whole Corcoran area. I mean, yeah, sorry. Hackamore Trail, Pinto Drive, Clydesdale Drive, and I'm just like, you got rid of all of them. Don't use those names. So.
Might not get as passionate, but I agree. I mean, nothing worse than just faking something, right? I mean, let it be what it is. It's a new building. It's about materials. It's about the landscaping. It's about the type of fencing that you might put along Fernbrook around the holding pond there. Maybe it's more of a, the two-post kind of fence that you see out of a cattle ranch or something, right? That kind of thing. It's those little touches that start to give a nod to it without having to blatantly copy everything. So that's what I would like to see. But I like the commercial. I like the idea of a gas station quick trip kind of deal there. I like the idea of a quick trip up in Folsom. I haven't said that for a few meetings, so I always do. Bill's Super Rat. There's a lot of different options. They're great.
They're more grocery.
Yeah.
We need that stuff.
There was some inquiry about them at first. I just didn't want to say because I haven't really had a lot of talk to them.
Yeah.
There is actually another young gentleman that he's been inquiring, and he'd like to put one of himself. I'm like, I don't think you can compete against the big boys,
Yeah.
No. So.
But just something, this town needs those quick grocery store, convenience store kind of things, right? Especially as we get more and more rooftops. I'd encourage, I love the little moments in these developments where you can see into the ponds, from the street. So right to the east of the main circle there, you've got that little gap there, right? And so you can there's going to be some landscape in there. You can see the pond. It shows a little bit of relief within all these big houses, right?
It provides Public Works a way to access it.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. So it's if you change the middle to 65 lots, can you give a little gap in one or two spots? It doesn't have to be much, but just those little vistas where you can kind of see what's going on back there without feeling like you're creeping on the neighbors, trying to see between their houses or something. I think the bike paths are nice through the space. We haven't touched on that, but I always like the connector paths, from the cul-de-sac around the pond over to the street. And that gets lost a little bit on the south side of the development right now, but maybe that's okay.
I think it's going to come down and we'll go on Glacier, down there.
Yeah,
But
and you have them all in the streets and stuff,
Yeah.
right? So, but it's those little backyard ones that are kind of nice too. I don't have, well, actually I do have a path in my backyard. It's cool. I don't mind people walking back there, and it's nice to have the activity. So, it's I'm just kind of dumping here as, going back to some of the previous conversations, but the villa's up on the top, south or north, east corner. I think that is a good spot for those. I like the use of the alley there to allow the success of those smaller 40-foot lots, because it doesn't just put garage doors along the street. All right, so as you're driving down the street, it's walkable. You're seeing the living rooms, you're seeing the front porches. Hopefully people are coming out that way once in a while in the evening with their dogs and stuff like that, and their kids. And, the garages are in the back, and you kind of get rid of that, feel of all garage doors, which I struggle with a lot of these newer properties that do squeeze down the lot sizes, where you look down and it's just garage doors. you know. So, I mean, that's a small touch that makes it feel a little bit more rural, right? And then it's all landscaping, you know, that takes it from there. And these developments take 15, 20 years for the landscaping to really take shape and start to feel like a existing neighborhood with,
I
you know,
was in
trees.
Nature's Crossing the other day, and that place is gorgeous now.
Yeah.
With all the,
Yeah,
you
it
guys.
just takes time. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just
yeah, you
like-
put these tiny little trees in and.
Yeah, and I've
Yeah,
tried
it's-
like putting like 4 and 5 inch in, and you put a 2.5, you know what? I mean, after a few years, that 2.5, you know, it just,
Takes
you stunt
off.
that big tree so much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people waste money on the bigger caliber thinking that they're gonna get better success quickly, but you shocked a tree that was
Yeah.
doing pretty good where it was, and then you pulled it out of the ground.
Yeah.
So I got a question on the parking for the playfield. Is that,
So the park, in the park, so there's a parking lot on the
Yep.
north side and then the south
and
side.
then we have one on the south side. And I guess my only comment is, this is probably lob it over to Parks Commission, but on that, one of the things that irks me a little bit about some of the homes in our neighborhood and why I didn't choose those lots is you're driving right up there, up that street, and all of the headlights shine at that house as they're making that turn. And so we have an advantage here to slide it over 2 lots and put it right on the stub,
For the street.
yeah, of the street. And does that make sense with the park programming? Just, you know,
What else?
you lose no less lots. It just doesn't make,
What would you do with it? I can't
Just
quite
move
remember.
it 2 lots to the right.
And,
Oh, and
So it's
come,
aligned with
And
the
so
street.
it
come
aligns
straight
with
from
the
the
street.
street. Got
Yeah.
it.
and I would agree with you, except it has that large power line.
Oh, that the power line's right there. Okay,
Yeah.
then
That's
And
what
so
you
we
wanna
put
use
the
it.
parking under the park.
then
power line.
then you can't do that. So
And it actually would probably even go under a little bit for the golf course piece that we have.
yeah, I didn't.
But otherwise, I think your idea is phenomenal, right?
I didn't think
mean,
about that. I was only thinking about the roadway traffic.
But that really will be, right, the whole trail park has to focus, run along that power
Yep.
line for eventually to get to the Maple Grove.
I think the other thing is that one cul-de-sac on the lower left corner here. If it's, I don't know if it's possible or not, but to make a connection from there out to 113th by trail or sidewalk. I see a lot of people just trying to cut through to go to Sundance, trying to cut through someone's yard, and certainly there is trail and connections other ways, just if you give them the option, they'll take it. So, those are my only,
Yeah, it could be nice maybe coming out on the bottom left, close to the pond and work down.
yeah,
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 where the 2 colors, where the yellow and the pink come together there.
yeah. I was just thinking, you know, if I lived at one of the houses across from the cul-de-sac, it's like, well, going to Sundance, you know,
It's right there, yeah.
then you don't have to cut around the pond like someone probably would. I think that's the only other one I picked up on.
A bit tangential, but it's bothering me. In the park, what's going on in the southwest quadrant of that park? What am I missing?
It's like bats and balls or
Yeah,
something.
I think the design has.
Is it disco?
Frisbee.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay,
Yes.
got it. I was just curious. And obviously that all changes as the city decides how they're gonna build out the park. I was just
Yeah,
curious what the thought process was there.
and Tom, you're gonna have to correct me. I believe that southwest quadrant is more hilly. I think in trees. I don't know if there's a plan possibly for a sliding hill.
Yeah, I was thinking
Yeah, I
something that would be sweet.
don't think it's that tall, to be
No,
honest with
okay.
you. Yeah.
It's pretty flat from what I remember.
So
So,
the green is built up as a high knot, but to
Okay.
really get
Yeah.
on the slide out, I see that thing getting all graded flat.
It's all sand.
yeah, I think generally it's hard to, well, it doesn't really show very well. So the plan is for a ballpark or ball field on the southeast corner. This would be more of I'll call it a soccer or football field, and tennis on the northeast, and then a playground in the northwest. Playground, basketball, and so on.
Any other comments at this time?
I guess the one thing, like the 45 foot wide lots, I get it up in the northeast corner. Where I'm struggling with it is that's what's all around the pond and this section south of the pond. And I know Nick has mentioned more 65 foot wide lots. I guess I would even be, I think I'm against the 45 foot lots around the pond. I'd rather see 55 foot lots, more villas than the 2-story houses where you're basically staring at garage doors.
Are you referring to the middle pond or the north pond?
The big pond, one more down.
The one you're down.
Yep, so all around that's 40 to 45 foot lots, as well as the south of that road. If you go south of the road,
Yeah.
that's all
The
40.
south side makes sense, I
A
think.
little bit.
Adjacent to 113th, but yes, I
I
think
think-
that middle block
Yeah, I
needs to
think
get
though,
relooked.
usually you probably want leave the south side just 40, 45, because you're kind of detaching them from the like kind of
People
uses.
directly across the street from
Yeah,
them.
for the HOA, but I guess I'd just like to rethink that, because, I don't know, I guess I'd be more comfortable with, 50, 55 foot wide lots there than 40, 45. So you have more of the traditional villa-looking home with a little more space between them. I don't know if others share that opinion, that want to.
Yeah, I could see, like you said, you want them to be similar product along whatever that street is, one block directly north of 113th. But then on the left side of that pond and the north side and the northeast side of that pond, maybe that's where you've got a product change. Because directly north of there, you've got 65-foot lots.
Correct.
So right there, you've got 65 across the street from 40s, right? So I definitely think those can change, and if you need me to point, I can.
You know, I'm wondering, just as we're looking here, and you guys, opinion, if this street did come here, we took this and this, and made these 65s tied here, because you're
Yeah.
getting into this neighborhood, and then, I don't know what we do here. I get it with the big pond.
Even if they were traditional villas, like a 50, 55 foot, I
Yeah.
think you get a better product that maximizes the pond and the look of
Yeah.
the neighborhood than,
Then the 2-story got it, yep.
I think generally, though, you're understanding our
Yep.
general thoughts on it.
and I would think about if there's some way you can actually tie a road in to those single-family homes. Like, that's how that
The
road.
existing.
Yeah, the existing single-family homes, not necessarily, like, I get it, we're gonna, like, just running an alley parallel to it isn't gonna set that up for someday. If the county comes in, buys them all out, we're gonna have a chunk of land that we can't develop.
So this is kind of a late staff idea was if this intersection goes away and this road came over to the east more up against the existing homes.
Yeah, I don't think, well, I don't know.
If you
If
did
they
that, you-
want the home.
Yeah, I
then
think
I'm-
they'd
then I'm
probably
losing-
struggle.
Then I'm
You're-
losing a lot of homes, you know?
Yep.
And I don't think, I mean, just, we've had enough discussions, I don't think they all want a bunch of traffic in the back of their house.
Already have plenty of traffic in front.
So, but could we take it up there and maybe with that, the turn somewhere, figure out to make it work,
Yeah, I mean, I hate to sacrifice a lot on you, I get it, but I think it's that important to the city to understand how someday that land is gonna be functional.
Well, and I'm wondering if it's maybe not in the middle and as the road curves up, I just kinda gotta do a layout, but maybe it's at that curve down a little bit lower,
Yeah.
but it's off the parkway, right? You just need access to it, because if it happens, it's all
Right.
gonna happen.
Yep.
So,
My last thought process here, the roundabout at 113th, that's going to require some county participation.
And I
Right.
just put it in there, so last time, when we were up on Rush Creek Parkway, literally the county gave us like 4 races. We're gonna go, no, we're not gonna do this, move it, but it just seemed like roundabouts are more popular. So I
Yep.
just threw it in there thinking they're gonna ask us to do it, but obviously that's a county decision, I mean, if
I
you
think that'd be really good, well, I guess the one downside of the existing residence is it slows traffic down in front of their house, but you also hear revving engines way more when they come through out of the roundabout.
If
Some
you get a
people feel the need
roundabout
to
on
punch it.
117th, and now you've got two spots with a small
True.
distance between them where you're not going to get as
True.
much speeding, so.
Yeah,
I will
and
tell
that
you,
could
if
really
you,
be a
you
benefit.
can, you can ask Lee, right? It is, right? You take that 7 in the morning and 5, it's hard getting out.
Yeah.
Or I think this will help.
So
I
if
think
you,
everybody will be in favor, right?
Yeah, definitely, Tom, your ideas have been pretty decent. But it's taking, I told you, I've got time for 8 minutes to get out of my driveway.
Let's make this formal. Let's,
Let's do that.
7:56, let's open the public hearing.
Thanks, Tom.
I'm not gonna choose you, actually.
What's that?
I'm not gonna choose you, I can sit.
Well,
I
see,
think they'll get you.
I think so. I'm probably done, so.
Okay. Well, I got nothing bad to say about you.
We've had a lot of talks.
Yeah.
all of your neighbors got notified, right?
So
This-
this is not a public hearing.
Nobody got notified.
So the public
It's-
heering was held with the,
Oh, that's right, okay.
With
So we're
Concept
reopening
plan.
the public hearing.
Oh,
No.
did we have to do that to take their?
No,
No.
well, I don't
Technically, if
know.
we want to have stands
so,
speak on
yeah.
that, we need to.
Yeah.
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 Whatever you guys are gonna do. get
Got
your-
it. That's where you
So-
confused me. I was like, he's the only one that showed up.
So go ahead and name and address and
All
comments.
right, yeah, Lee Holquist, live at 11471 Fernbrook Lane, and I have the northernmost lot in that, row 6. I want to start, first off, the one thing that we're not real wild about, I mean, is I talked to Keith Grover last night, and he wants to emphasize how much he does not want a gas station with 24-hour lighting right across the street from his house. When, to Nick's point earlier, I grew up in North Minneapolis. When we had 11 apartment buildings together, which was the original proposal, we called that the projects, and it was not where you wanted your kids to be. High-density housing, especially if you want to make it low-cost, isn't always a good deal. I mean, I'm for mixed housing, and I believe really we should have that, but you cram a whole bunch of people together, you're looking for problems. My issue, 2 years ago, when they were talking about developing a Lee property, I came up here and I spoke because the developer was saying he was having drainage problems. And I asked then what was going to be done about drainage. Excuse me, my throat's getting dried out. Since he started working, I'm pumping water. I pumped water all last summer, all winter. I'm pumping water right now, and it's consistently been about every 6 minutes. This isn't surface water or anything else. They've done something. And I think the city has an obligation to do something about it. You approved it. You guys should have researched it. Apparently you did, and I got water anyway. And right now, if you drive down Fernbrook, nobody can cut their grass in the ditches because of standing water. If you're not going to take care of the ditch, at least come out and take care of the mosquito problems. I don't know, that's most of what I want to see. I mean, I don't like the idea of a road going behind my house, and I can tell you the other neighbors are not either.
how about the alley?
The alley's
Or-
kind of tolerable. I really thought Tom had a good idea, and we worked it out, and
Okay,
just
so-
hiking access is really all I need.
Okay,
But a
so when-
potential of a future alley, right?
Yeah,
Not
you wanted-
actually
Right,
building
but
an
when you
alley.
say a posted road, you mean like a street, not a alley?
Well, I think it was Darren proposed running a road up through one of those houses. Did I get that right?
Running the road on a curve so as it gets towards your house.
Yeah, imagine
And
that.
I'm not, it's nothing against anybody here. I'm more thinking about even, someday these things are going to be all changing. So I'm more thinking bigger picture long term. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
screw anyone over, but obviously sometimes decisions do.
Well,
So I was more thinking of it curving that way. It came up that way, and you could have a townhome development on each side of it. That way, you could have access to where all those single-family homes are, if that use were to ever change.
and all I see out of that is I'm just going to have a lot more traffic in my backyard. So my personal feeling, from what I heard you say, isn't very positive. I don't know what else. Like I say, I thought we had a good plan. Tom, we moved the apartment buildings off of that area, and it's workable. I have no upside to this for me. It's just going to cost me a buttload of money to hook the sewer and water. It's not going to add that kind of value to my house. But I've been told I'll be taxed for it next year, right? Isn't that what you said? Taxes are going up, I think you said.
The taxes are usually typically go up, yeah.
Hopefully not another 30% hit.
Yeah.
I will say, so, all the homeowners We've gotten together twice between the meetings and met. John and Zach are involved too, and I mean, I think we've had really good discussions.
Yeah, no,
and working
it's
through
been very
that,
positive,
you know?
Tom.
And so from that standpoint, and Lee, he has a septic that's working in his newer system. There are a few others, so
I am
he's
compliant.
been good with the neighbors to say, I get it, right? And if you're gonna hook up, probably now's the time to do it, so.
Can I just say, I'm very grateful that you took the time to meet with the neighbors and work that out instead of just saying, because sometimes I feel like the developers don't care about the neighbors who are there at all and are just like, whatever, it's not our problem. And I think that's really awesome. And thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
You're welcome, and I mean, right, I've known a lot of them, right? Been there, they're, you know, the Powers, their kids were, you know, I guess he's a little younger, worked for me for a while, but yeah, they've been there forever, right? And I see it, and I see the drainage just from, spent a lot of years in the farm, but way back, right? It's, right, nobody thought about drainage back in the 60s building a house, right? Here's a spot, dig a hole and build it, so.
Well, and my issue now is, like I say, since they started development of the Brayburn and the Lee properties up there, I consistently have water, and I have water every 6 minutes I'm pumping. And I think you guys need to fix that.
The city engineer is not here today, John, but has this been on the agenda to understand, like, the city is aware of this?
We're aware of, yeah, I mean, we've heard it
I've
from
made 'em
you
aware.
several times.
Okay.
But if you don't, it's a squeaky wheel theory here.
Yep.
I just wanted to confirm that they were aware.
Okay. And then the other thing, I guess, I gotta say, I'm not real wild about the idea of the construction hours. I can hear them working on the other side of the hill from my backyard. I don't wanna hear them 6 or 7 days a week out there working 75 feet from my doorstep. And since we don't know how long this project's gonna take, I mean, I'm in my mid-70s, I could die before this whole project's done, I mean, which might be easier for you guys, but, you know, I don't think you need to be working 6 days a week or more out there. 5 days a week is plenty. You got 5 9-hour days planned. I think that should be adequate.
So the city code does allow construction Monday, 6 days a week, so not Sundays, no Sundays, no holidays.
Shorter hours
But
on Saturday.
shorter hours on
Yeah,
Saturday.
only 7 hours instead of 9, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's actually 12. So that was one of the areas we probably did agree to disagree on. You know, but sometimes I think, like we said, it's weather driven, right? You
But the
know,
hours, the
You only
days I
have
want to
so
use my
many months
backyard,
to
I can't
construct.
because I got a D9 cat out there
Yeah.
playing or something. That's not reasonable.
How much,
The good thing is in the winter, you'll probably be really quiet.
have you looked at how
6
much,
months long.
I guess, Tom, to that point, have you looked at how much grading at all is needed out here?
We have it in the back. I mean, I think along to their houses is they're gonna be grading, otherwise, yeah, quite a bit. And I think even just knowing the grading, you know, everything's kind of flat. There's not only so much we can do to their lot is, you know, we're gonna have to grade our backyards into, you know, it's gonna need a storm pipe back there. I don't see how else you're gonna get the water moved out of their yards without it, you know? So, but I could tell you what we're cutting. I actually think, you know, right behind, that's probably not a lot, but, you know, right, you don't go very far, there's a lot. That hill's gonna need to come down, that's right out of his backyard, so.
I'm looking when they're building these new houses, they're building 5, 6 feet of ground up underneath them because there's drainage issues out there. They're not building them at the level that my house is. And so my house is where all that water's gonna go. You put a huge apartment building parking lot next to my house, and that water, where do you think that water's gonna drain to? And I think the city has an obligation to plan for that, and it doesn't look like it was planned for very well so far.
I do think one of the things we talked about, Lee, those, right, there's a concept. So then when engineering, as you move forward, then all the engineering, everything is graded. You know, we haven't done that work yet because we don't know if it's even a good project.
Well, and I'm hearing it's not surface water as much as it's potentially underground, right? I mean, that, to me, that screams a tile line somewhere,
Yeah.
right? When the whole farmstead develops and all of the tile line is disrupted and you've got ponding elsewhere, I've seen in other projects those issues rectify themselves because you had a tile line that got disrupted, and then you will create ponding that intentionally keeps that drainage internal to the site. Where the tile line, that's actually the opposite. They want to move a bunch of water to some other part of the farm field. I'm not saying that's the case here, and I do think, you know, the engineers need to be aware of it and make sure that that's something that they take into consideration with it. But with sounding like it being underground water, it could be a tricky issue.
I don't want to believe it's going to rectify itself. I want to know it's going to be rectified.
I'm not the engineer for the project, so I can't tell you that.
But you understand my concern.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
You know, this project's going to make my house hard to sell if I wanted to sell it. Just a whole lot of, like I say, there's no positives in this house for me, in this project for me. And I don't know, I realize development happens. I wish that Brad could keep corn out there. It's the best privacy fence in the world. And yeah, and it's been a good neighbor and all that stuff, but I realize that's not going to happen either, so.
And I said that too, just Tom, I heard you say might need some drains in the backyard, right? I'm not sure that, where I'm coming from, I'm not sure that that's the only solution. Because it doesn't sound like it's all surface water.
All our sumps run out, you know, so I explained to them, hey, all the new
Connect
ones,
them.
right? You're connecting a sump to a drain pipe.
Yep.
You know, instead of even just that 4-inch sewer pipe, you know, we probably need to get connections into the storm pipe bigger
Yep,
and.
send them some stubs,
Yeah.
just little stubs they can tie into and
Yeah.
get their gutters
And-
to it, and, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, even at that, the ditch in front of our house doesn't drain. Like I say, if anybody can cut their grass out there, it's with a weed whip, because it's just so wet, you can't walk out there.
Yep.
This has come about since the project development started on the Lee project up here. So that gives me the idea that that's where it's originated.
Well, and that's part of where I think Nick's going too, is it'd be interesting, you know, you got some of the elevations in here, but to see what the elevations and depths of the ponds are, and that'll really change what's going on underground.
Yeah, but I want to know that something's going to be done now.
Yeah.
I've been pumping water for a long time. It's costing me pumps. It's costing me electricity. I can change a pump in my house in less than a minute now because I'm all set up to do it. If I lose electricity, I'm screwed. You know, I've got water in the basement quickly. And I've said this before. I said it 2 years ago. And I just want to know what's going to be done.
And just for anyone that's watching this and is confused, your house is the very north.
The very north one.
and
First one the water gets to.
Yep, and then when we're talking about the Lee property, this is now Building Trails East.
Yeah, yes.
So, yeah.
So, anyway, anything else, I'd just be ranting, I think, and I've said what I want to say for the most part.
The one thing I did want to clarify, one of your comments was about the apartments. You know, and I think what we've been bringing up here is, you know, at some point there needs to be apartments in Dayton.
I'm not sure
I
it
just,
does, but.
well, from a density standpoint, I think Met Council is going to push us there. I think if we want to preserve rural character elsewhere and have
Well, that used to be
lower
our
density
city motto,
elsewhere.
and I noticed that got taken off of the newsletters, didn't it? I mean, it was, we were talking about a river community and all that stuff, and that just kind of disappeared.
And I think a couple of us had shared, me in particular, I think if there's an apartment in this project, that would be the spot, given that the commercial is the neighbor to its north, the pond is the neighbor to its south, a pond is the neighbor to the east, and Fernbrook a neighbor to the east.
You're talking about the commercial area.
Behind the Dean's Country Manor.
right
Yeah,
there.
west of Dean's Country Manor, right there, if that were apartments, right, there's, you don't see it there, but there's a pond directly to the south. I mean, it's the right neighbors for it, and I just wanted to reinforce that thought from my perspective.
Well, and for me,
I
it's the mix.
get it, and I think the Fernbrook View apartment, sorry.
Yeah.
The Fernbrook View apartments are what I kind of have in mind, right? Those are right at the corner of Fernbrook and 81. It's the brown, kind of longer north to south style apartments. Has good on-site amenities. It doesn't have to be what you would reference from Minneapolis, right? It doesn't have to be that type of a product. If the amenities are there,
Well, I
the
don't want it to
rents are
become
at a
that kind of
certain,
product down the
at a
down the
certain
road
rate.
either.
What's that?
I don't want it to become that kind of a product down the road either, because that's.
Sure.
Ultimately, that's what happens to these things, if you get overbuilt or whatever.
You know, for me, I think that's kind of more of an upper echelon type apartment would be the idea. You know, something that has, you know, they have on-site amenities there for a little bit of trails and a little bit of a sitting area and stuff like that. To me, that's what I would envision in that area as far as an apartment goes.
Well, it's one.
Yeah.
Like it's not a whole neighborhood of nothing but that. It is one apartment block in with, like you said, the right neighbors, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's the mix. I like the mix. I think that's good for neighborhoods to have different size, like different I think that's good for our communities in general. So that when you have a wide variety of products and types and styles and people, it makes for a better community. So. I also would not want to see 90 acres of apartment buildings.
And that's why it's a nice small spot.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's what I like about Tom's idea. It's a mix. If I have to live with it, I'm content with that. I don't really plan on selling my house right now. I've done everything people are supposed to do. I bought my house a long time ago, paid it off, got it the way I want it, and I don't want to feel like I'm forced out of it, or like some people taxed out of it. You know, I think three of us in there are retired out of the 6 houses. Don't want to be getting squeezed any more than we are.
I appreciate that.
Anything else, Tom? Anything I should add?
Tom, before you get out of there, one last thing I forgot about. Brad's and his wife's house. When you think about the concept plan, I think it'd be a benefit to the city with the PUD if you could figure out how to get access to that house, not from 117.
Okay. And I do know, I think, what isn't showing there, but they're talking about some trunk line that between his house and the pond, that there's a really a trunk line running up from Glacier all the way through that would go service like maybe some of the existing homes and everything, you know, to north of there, where a lot of the other project, even Rayburn, it would run south to the west. There's like 2 major lines there. That when you get down to Rush Creek Parkway, flow into the main trunk. But I actually been trying to look to say, yeah, what could you? I think that would be fine to move.
If you could, because that would help with the spacing, because when that roundabout someday goes in, that's only about 450 feet from the intersection, so it'd be nice if you could get that figured out.
Okay.
Tom, is there any opposition to removing the house and putting in more townhomes?
Well, I think right now Brad's not sure if he'd like to move, right? You know,
Yep.
so it's kind of the same thing.
Is he like neighbors?
Yeah. Well, it's gonna be different, right?
Yeah.
And that's a
Good question to ask.
Well, you know, he's been farmers all life, right? So that's definitely something that I think
You
I
can't
can't
bunch
answer
them.
for him, but I know he and his wife Carrie are, you know, kind of trying to figure out. One sad part, it is a really nice house, right? He's just totally rebuilt it all a few years ago, so it's really too nice a house to tear down.
Could you go splat it, potentially?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, because it's going to be a while before this gets
Yeah.
built in his
Right.
backyard.
Yes.
Maybe the luster is worn off, and he might be convinced to.
Right.
I mean, I envision that's 17, 18 acres, right? You could probably fit another 10 or 15 of the 40 lot homes up there with a single drive.
This little
Yeah,
chunk
just-
is less than 17. That's just
Oh, that's
17 acres. Is
Oh, 17 acres.
Full
the whole-
property.
Okay, sorry, I was reading it wrong.
Yeah.
But
You
you
probably have
could,
to extend that pond and then chew up some of it, but yeah.
you could probably fit, another 10 of the alley homes.
Yeah, maybe
That
just
are
go
in the
down
circle.
the street off or
And
stuff
just-
where it turns, you know, and you
Yeah.
Just
back
goes-
them all
I mean,
up
that's
to
pretty
that.
easy to.
Yeah, I mean, if the home stays, I guess the home stays. I was just more thinking about
Yeah.
trying to get access to it, but, the hard part is if you don't take it day one, it's probably not taking it out in reality, because like you said, it's a nice home.
Yeah.
You're never gonna get the value out of the land
No.
to justify tearing down the house if you don't do it day one.
It'll be there 50 years.
All right. Lee, anything else? I'm going to
No,
close
I
public.
think, anything else, I'd probably just be ranting.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I would, since you did open up for public comment, we did get one comment
Oh.
and question online that I can read to you if you'd like.
Sure.
From Aaron Wares, apologies if I mispronounce the name, 14536 112th Avenue North, regarding the coffee shop that's located along, it'd be that corner there, right there where he's got his cursor. Could there be another use for that space? Perhaps it can be a buffer between residential and commercial, and then can only the east side of that Glacier Lane area contain the commercial part of the development. And then the That was the question, and then the comment from the same resident noted that they agreed with the commission's comment regarding landscape median to 113th, 114th, similar to what you would see at Rush Creek Parkway.
This would all be HOA then too, right? All of it? That's where I get a little concerned with those medians, because we've got parts in Sundance Woods that are maintained differently.
With that, at 8:16, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Let's just do a quick once around. Any more comments, Nick?
Nope.
Paul?
I'm good.
Aaron?
I'm good.
I'm good.
I have nothing more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Does that mean?
So I will say, I do appreciate.
No, stick around.
You're good.
Want to talk about cannabis?
First time and then
No.
the other
Alright.
side.
Are you sure? Even though I grew up in the 60s.
The coffee shop might get renamed.
Yeah. Coffee and.
Green Goods.
All right. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, I wanted to introduce an item to you that will be an eventual ordinance amendment that will have to take place regarding zoning of adult use cannabis businesses that recently have been approved by the Minnesota legislature in 2023. The state created 16 license classifications, and those are detailed out on the next slide, for cannabis-related businesses to obtain prior to conducting operations in Minnesota. The state did give local zoning authority to the governments, providing them the opportunity to regulate the businesses for zoning related to time, place, and manner. One note that I want to make certain is that the state does require that all local governments provide an area, or at least somewhere in town, for all of these operations to conduct business. So I did list out the license types on this slide. It's pretty cumbersome, but it includes micro businesses that can incorporate cultivation, retail, and processing into retail items. Of course, the cannabis cultivator, manufacturer, retailer as separate businesses, as standalones. Wholesaling, transporting, testing facilities, and so on as they are listed. The process that the state will go about with the Office of Cannabis Management that has been recently created is that a business will first apply for a license through the state. What the state does is they accept that application and review it on their side, making sure that it is compliant with all the state statute, be Chapter 342 of state statute if you get bored at night for reading purposes. What they would do is they would reach out directly to the cities and have, the city would have 30 days to review the application and verify compliance with the zoning of the city. Whether that be the response would be, yep, they are compliant, here is the things that they need to abide by per the zoning ordinance, and then if there was a required conditional use permit of some sort or something like that, that would be the information that the state would need to proceed. In terms of where the city's currently at in its process, as Mayor Fisher mentioned in August, the city council did pass a prohibition or a moratorium prohibiting cannabis businesses within the city until January 1st, 2025. That was an opportunity that the state allowed, so they, one, could get their house in order for the Office of Cannabis Management to be established, have their rulemaking period done, and have those rules established for the licensing operation. And of course, in the statute, the limitation there is that businesses can't conduct operations aside from cultivation until January 1st, 2025. And this is basically the introduction of the zoning ordinance side of things for the city to consider and look into. And what we would kind of be looking for from a staff standpoint is any recommendations or considerations that you would have for zoning. And then we would then take the information from both the Planning Commission and the City Council and bring them back to you for public hearing, likely in November. Included in your packet, I did what we did as a staff was create a use table in there that kind of lists out, if the cannabis aside, where would these types of businesses regularly be located and how would they be permitted? So that was kind of the benchmark or kind of the jumping off point that we started with. And beyond that is certainly up to the Planning Commission's purview for thinking of other considerations that might be important to note. I've listed a couple of these things here. One of the things that I had in there for standards applicable to all cannabis uses that we incorporated was making sure that these businesses were operating solely within the building space that they would have. There'd be no outdoor storage or any outdoor operation or activity occurring on the site. With that, one of the questions that we had noted was, given that that is something that the city included, or at least staff included in their original benchmark ordinance, does the Planning Commission feel a need to further restrict these uses in certain districts? For one example that I have in there is retail businesses for cannabis would be generally located in the same areas and permitted the same way as liquor stores and tobacco shops. So where you would see in the use table where retail shops would be conditional use permits, that is how it, I guess, liquor stores and tobacco shops would be approved through the city in that case. And where it's permitted, that's where those locations are permitted as well. One thing that will be included also in the zoning ordinance would be buffer requirements for all of these businesses. This isn't specific to retail or anything like that. This would be inclusive of all 16 licensed businesses in Dayton zoning ordinance. What I have here included are the maximum allowed buffers by state statute. For the benchmark, the one thing that I carried over from the liquor store and tobacco shop is that the standard buffer for liquor license locations is that you have to be a minimum 100 feet from schools.
100 or 1,000?
It's 100 in the city code.
Right.
The city code also references 100 feet from a church, but the state statute doesn't give local zoning authority to regulate buffers from religious institutions. So these are a couple of the things that you would certainly consider for the Planning Commission, and that however you'd feel about increasing those or adding certain ones related to what is allowed for the by statute. The other one that was important, took a lot of thought, was related to home occupation for lower potency hemp manufacturers. A question for the Planning Commission and the City Council would really be if they can meet the guidelines of the state statute for lower potency manufacturing, as well as the home occupation permit guidelines within the city zoning ordinance. Does the Planning Commission feel that it would be an acceptable home occupation? Something to consider, not that we have any initial thought or reaction to that.
And again, that'd have to be indoors then, though.
Correct.
As a home occupation.
So it would not be in the backyard.
Not a backyard moonshine.
Perfect.
Right, and this is specifically related to the manufacturing that's licensed through the state. As you might know, that there are private opportunities for possessing marijuana within, I think, the state statute. The maximum for a person to have on their person is, I think, 2 pounds. And then I think you can have up to 8 plants with 4 maturing at that time for private use only. This is not a commercial aspect of that. So those are kind of the main things related to the zoning ordinance that we wanted to first address with the Planning Commission and the City Council subsequently next Tuesday. What we would initially be doing is taking feedback, and then whether we can touch on this again in October or if we'd be ready in November to bring this to public hearing for initial adoption. That is up to the Planning Commission and the City Council. I did note down here on the bottom that there are certain areas that the statute does address as well, but staff found that those would probably be better addressed by the city code, as some of them are related to the retail registration portion of it. There are things like the city can prohibit, if I think the threshold or the ratio that cities are allowed to work within is 1 retail store per 12,500 people within your municipality. Meaning that since Dayton is under that threshold, they still are required to allow at least 1. So that would be the state requirement for that. And included in that are hours of operation for the retail. It doesn't really address, the hours of operation for other licensed businesses would be subject to the standard city code requirements and that. I guess I'll open up for questions if you have any or any initial thoughts and recommendations. One of the things that I did want to note too was that in talking with public safety, one of the recommendations was to limit cultivation to indoor only within industrial buildings. I did send this draft ordinance off to the city attorney's office for review, and their initial reaction to that was that that might be preempted and not allowed by state statute regarding limiting or prohibiting outdoor cultivation and ag uses. So that'll be further discussed with the attorney's office to see if that would remain an issue. And obviously all of this is going to be subject to city attorney review and approval or blessing prior to bringing to you guys for final adoption.
All the more reason to get the half-acre lots zoned A1, not zoned A1.
Right. And I think one of the other limitations that the city attorney mentioned was that given the economic outlook for outdoor cultivation in Minnesota, it might not be an issue that we would be dealing with, that people would probably prefer to be indoors related to security issues or whatever it may be, something like that.
Environmental, probably.
Right, and I think that the limitation really by state statute for cultivation outdoors is I think 2 acres max on a parcel, and then under special circumstances, if you can meet certain guidelines, you could have up to 4. So we're not talking about 40 acres of cannabis cultivation out there farming. So
I have 18 acres. I could.
You got a big shed now. You got a big shed. You don't need to be
I don't. I
outside.
can do. I can. Yeah.
Do you need to abstain from this?
No.
So these setback buffers are
So-
the max that the state allows. We can't make them bigger.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it possible to pull the table up?
Yep. I was just about to do that.
Because I think it would be good to go through each use and how we feel about where it can be.
Use and then talk
Used.
about buffers and other
then-
stuff.
Yeah, we can, and then talk about buffers and other things. I mean, I think this ties right into what we need to look at, the buffers a little bit as well, and I think that's pretty much our purview.
And I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head, but regarding, commercial and industrial districts abutting residential, there are already standard buffers that are implemented within the zoning ordinance. So you do have that to go off of as well.
The one question for clarification I have as I was reading through this, and I didn't do any research on this, but the lower potency,
You never have since high school.
the lower potency items, is that, so I know liquor stores are selling this now.
The Delta,
Yeah.
whatever.
Is that considered the lower potency items, and because Dayton, the liquor store in town is selling, if they're selling it, is that our one store?
Actually, the lower potency retail is exempt from that
Is exempt.
limitation.
Okay, so that's-
there's no limitations to the amount of low potency hemp derived.
And that's what I was trying to get at
Sure.
was, is there a restriction there or something where we might run into an issue with?
To clarify,
retailers?
we can allow more than one.
Absolutely.
We have to allow a minimum of one.
Right, and then once Dayton eventually exceeds that 12,500 threshold, then you would be
Yeah.
subject to requiring or at least allowing 2. A couple of notes on the lower potency hemp edible retail establishments is I did have this note there that you are correct that there are liquor store places in there. I think there might be convenience stores in town that currently have these things for sale. There was a note that this could potentially be an accessory use to those. So if they will have to go through the licensing process for the lower potency hemp to continue doing what they are doing. And if there hasn't really been an issue in the past, this would be the opportunity to continue their operations that way, where if you have a liquor license or a tobacco license already established on the property, you would be able to have a lower potency hemp edible retailer license as an accessory use.
I don't disagree with that concept.
And that's inclusive of, I think in the note too that I have for the lower potency hemp edible manufacturers, and this might have to include retail, I'm not entirely sure, I'd have to do a little bit more research on that. But you see a lot of microbreweries or brew pubs that will do drinks that are THC infused with the low potency hemp stuff. This would provide them the opportunity to do that. I think that there are places like Lupulin and Big Lake that currently has that stuff going on.
So if we start with this table, the one question I have, I guess, GMU 5, that's the new area.
Southwest Dehn.
Yep. So I really like what staff said about essentially if you're cultivating, growing it, it's more of a manufacturing process versus if you're selling it, it's more of a retail process, and that's kind of how you separate them out. I guess what I was struggling is why are we permitting cultivation in the GMU 5? What was your thought process there?
Versus a conditional or just outright not?
Just permitted, because we don't, I guess my thoughts is we didn't want big industrial buildings there, because that's what you'd have to build to cultivate it in, is a big box industrial building.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
that's where I would suggest probably not allowing it there
Right.
for cultivating.
Sure. Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. You know, I think it probably could have been something within the allowable uses in the GMU 5 that could have reflected an industrial style facility. But the other thing that's good with the GMU 5 district is that there's pretty strict performance standards that go into that district, including all new developments require a planned unit development. So that could certainly be an area that could be removed from the cultivation side of things.
I think it's appropriate to remove it from the cultivation if we don't want to
Remove it or conditional?
I would remove it if we don't want a big box industrial building there, because that's what's going to have to go in.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is that there's almost no need for having conditional uses within the
All right, because it's PUD.
right, unless I guess again, these zoning districts are new to me, but I don't know if there are GMU 5 areas currently zoned within the city.
No.
So in the event that someone would want to do that, they would have to go through the PUD and rezoning process regardless. But again, this is exactly the type of discussion that staff is looking for.
Because it's only limited to that southwest side, GMU 5, that very specific area, I think striking is appropriate for cultivating.
Sure.
I'd agree with you.
Yeah. The GMU 5 specifically talks about being the gateway to the city.
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily want the gateway to the city to be
100,000
like,
square foot building with-
here's a giant warehouse where we grow pot. So like, I don't necessarily want that to be like, welcome to Dayton. This is what we do. So I would agree with taking the cultivation out of GMU 5.
And the manufacturing.
Why wouldn't you attack it from the standpoint of the warehouse instead of worrying about cultivation? If you don't want warehouses there,
Yeah.
did I miss something?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of leaning in your spot of, like, if we don't want a warehouse in GMU 5,
Then
I mean, if someone wants an operation no bigger than this room in GMU 5, that might not be an issue.
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
I-
It seems to me that
I guess I'm more looking at it from a standpoint of why GMU 5 then, and why not GMU 3, GMU 4? Or what's the logic there? If we're targeting industrial here versus business here, what's the logic of just GMU 5?
So maybe just, that's one, maybe the suggestion is, let's look at,
I mean, does anyone know how big what's the typical size of a cultivator building? I probably no idea. So that's what Dan
I know
brought up as a
that-
good point, is maybe they're whatever, 6,000 square foot buildings.
So
building, I don't care what they're doing.
the state statute does have requirements for maximum allowed a canopy area within these cultivation things, so they would have to comply with that. Off the top of my head, I don't have that information right now,
Okay.
but I can certainly provide that to you.
so,
And I think in regard to the mixed-use districts regarding cultivation, I think, really, I was just going off the definitions of the mixed use being GMU3 is historic village and GMU2 is the city center mixed use district, and I guess that would be the reason why I kind of stayed away from that and focus more of where would you normally see an industrial type of use like that. And certainly I think that the GMU5 area is up for discussion of whether it really should be included in there or not.
So maybe let's just flag that as discussion.
Maybe,
for when.
or I would even put potentially a C there, conditional use permit, because my concern is if it's a big, huge building, that's my concern.
Sure.
If it's a 5,000 square foot space in a building that you don't even, part of a bigger building, it's like, I don't care. But if it's a big building, that's where I was like, well, that might be weird.
I think I actually have the chapter pulled up here on, you can take a look and see what,
Okay. What is, like, cannabis delivery service? I get it, they're moving cannabis around. Why do we even have to address that? Why do we care? Do we care if they move alcohol around? I guess is what I'm trying to think.
Exactly. Well, I wouldn't say that we necessarily would care. Obviously, pizza places have delivery operations going on as an accessory use to what they do inside the building.
DoorDash can deliver alcohol.
Right, exactly. The one thing that I would note is that there is an opportunity that a business would come in and say, we want to establish a standalone delivery service where it's basically a fleet of vehicles that would kind of go out. Not that this is something that would happen tomorrow or something like that, but
Burnix Liquor.
just having it included within the use table would be something in the event that someone went and found a piece of property and said, I want to build a facility and we're going to have fleet vehicles there for delivery service.
Yeah, then I would strike that from GMU5 or make it a C and make it more of a I1. B4, to my understanding, at some point in time, we're probably going to phase it out because
That was the intent.
it's a old mixture of commercial and industrial.
I don't think we have any B4 zoning.
Yeah, so I'm not too concerned if, even I2, we don't even have any I2 on the zoning map anymore. Okay.
All right.
So
and
if you're
just-
going to have a delivery service, it's pretty clear that they have to be in an industrial area because that's where we'd allow fleet storage of vehicles.
Sure. But I think I also included in there within at least the ordinance, and I think it might be referenced on the use table as well, that if a retail establishment can meet the guidelines of the delivery service license, that could operate as an accessory use.
Yeah.
And just for reference, going back to the cultivation, an indoor facility would be limited to 30,000 square feet of canopy space by state statute. So that's just the canopy of the growing area, not necessarily the entire building size alone. So certainly with those types of limitations, it might be proactive of the city to leave it in the I-1 area
It'd
only.
be the first
and-
use to jump on the highway visibility on the interstate.
I think another thing that I want to note too is this mezzo business and micro business license that the state has too, and that allows people to cultivate, manufacture, process, and sell at the same location. Given all the moving parts in that area, it seemed, I guess it made sense to have all of that area as a conditional use so we can really get a look at the floor plan and understand what these spaces really look like in a proposal.
What do we do for small breweries? Is it similar?
We haven't had one. So.
Yeah,
We haven't
whatever we're
had
doing
one.
is too restrictive.
I know, from my understanding, it's only allowed in the business park district.
I thought we had it in one of the GMUs.
Thought we, yeah, but
If it was, it could be in the cities.
I think
I
it's
think
in the
it's-
GMU5.
I think it's in 5, I just read it.
Yeah.
We were the last city to get an interchange. We'll be the last one to get a brewery too.
Dean's
Sorry,
property,
not to be
DMC
real.
property right there, and it's by Country Manor.
I don't drink or smoke pot or do any,
you can't feed it to the horses.
you know,
So,
we'll get into everything. Or the chickens. Maybe I'd have really good eggs.
sidekick. Oh, you never.
The breweries are conditional use permits in the BP. And then if it is allowed in the GMU5, it
Yeah.
would be reviewed by way of PUD.
It says brewery with tap room in GMU 5 under permitted uses.
Okay. With the cannabis retailer, so it's permitted and everything, GMU 1, 2, 3, conditional in 4, but then it's not allowed in GMU 5. But yet we could allow retail strip centers there, so I think that there's going to be any place you're going to have a retail strip center with a liquor store or tobacco store, I think it's fair to say that someone wants to put it there. So I think it would be okay to put a C or P there.
Sure.
For GMU 5.
And again, I think I was just going off of where the
Yep.
liquor stores and tobacco shops were allowed rather than just the straight retailer, but absolutely, that could be,
Yep.
it could serve as a conditional use permit or,
Yep, and if I understood your comments at the beginning, the reason it's a C in B2 and B3 is because that's what liquor stores are, a conditional use?
correct.
Okay.
And actually, I think there might be a discrepancy in one of those districts regarding tobacco shops might be permitted and liquor stores might be conditional. And I think I just went with the more restrictive there to start.
To me, it seems like those, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong up here, but for the retailer, it could be either a C across all categories or a P across all categories. And I don't understand why we're discriminating necessarily by the different areas unless you guys got some logic.
Sure, when you think of conditional use permits, you're trying to predict what is the nuisance factor and what conditions would control those. So in this case, what is the nuisance that's created by a cannabis retailer or manufacturer or any of these
Yep.
16 uses?
Right, so when you think of the new, for a retailer, I can't imagine it being any different than a liquor store.
Liquor
Right.
store, yeah.
So then it would almost mimic what those already are.
Right,
And I
It
think
would be no different. You would.
yeah.
in
Or
terms
a
of
tobacco shop
Yeah.
or whatever.
And in terms of nuisances, I think that one of the really common, I've done some research around some cities that have already had this approved in other states and have been in operation for quite some time. One of the things that really kind of followed along with all of these zoning ordinance was related to odor mitigation, as that could be a nuisance of odor pollution
Got it.
around the area. And I
That's-
think one of the notes that I have in the ordinance to start was to require all cannabis licensed facilities to have an odor mitigation system. But I didn't want to get too picky on picking and choosing which odor mitigation system they could choose, as long as they have one in place to at least try and deter any odor pollution coming from their facility. That seems to help.
I mean, that, when I look at this, and you said no more nuisance than a liquor store, it's probably closer to the smoke shops.
Do they have odor?
Well, people go in and buy, and light went up right away outside the door.
Incense, no.
And, I mean, you know, we were at the fair this last weekend, and you could blatantly smell everyone who was doing it.
Yeah, but you had to be
It's hard to
within
hide, it smells.
10, 15 feet of those people.
It was
In my, because I was at the
basically,
fair as well.
yeah,
I
it
mean, you
was-
had somewhere to walk by, and be like, oh, nice.
Yeah.
Right?
but,
I wasn't smelling them from 50 feet away.
but it was still, I mean, if we put it in there as under the retailers, some sort of mitigation, it might be.
Because you're still not allowed to.
I mean, your point's correct. I mean, if they're gonna go outside and light up, that's no different than a cigar or a
Yeah, it's closer to the smoke
Alcohol
shops
doesn't
that
or smell like that.
that are going to be
Yeah.
that nuisance, in my opinion.
But well, correct me. Consumption of it in public, are you a sidewalk? Are you not allowed to do that? I don't know. I have not researched this at all.
Yeah, the state doesn't prohibit that.
Didn't think so.
Let me see here. I did have something in the staff report. So the law explicitly authorizes individuals to use adult use in their private residence on private property not generally accessible to the public, unless the property prohibits the use of the product. So if you've got say that you have a bar in town that has a smoking patio or something like that, they would be the ones that would have to regulate that, whether they would prohibit it on their property or not. It's not generally accessible to the public, but when it is open for operation, obviously it's accessible in some factor.
So by state law, it would be allowed to be smoked in a parking lot, standing next to your car.
Private property.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, if the, I think that there actually is a,
Unless there was signs up that, just no different how they, it's no different than cigarettes. You can tell people that you can't smoke on your private property. But if you don't tell them, like if you had a restaurant, you could say no smoking outside the door.
Right.
But if
So
you
that's-
said
that's
you don't care, they
Kind
can
of where I'm
smoke
going
wherever
with
they
it
want.
is, you could have a restaurant, and you can have those same nuisances in their parking lot.
Yep.
So, saying just because you purchased it right here means you're gonna smoke it right here, I don't know that necessarily checks out.
Well, where I was getting is more like the cigar shop in Maple Grove, where you can actually go in and smoke a cigar in there. You can go purchase a cigar and smoke it in there. That's more where I was getting
Okay.
it, is they're used on site more
I do,
at some of the higher end.
And they
smoke
probably
shops.
can't consume it indoors if it follows the tobacco rules. Or can they? I don't know.
well,
Somehow shops do.
I was just gonna note that, and again, this is all new to all cities in Minnesota,
We
so
need to
I'm
go on a
learning
field
just
trip.
as fast as you guys are. But,
Guess I'm the driver.
But what I do want to note is I believe, and this might be an attorney question related to on-site consumption, but I do believe that the state has what's called an endorsement for retail shops to allow on-site consumption. That I don't know if the city has code authority or zoning authority to prohibit that outright. But from my understanding, and again, this might be a question better for the city attorney, that the public places owned by the city, such as parks and things like that, and including right-of-way areas, are up to the discretion of the city. But that really would be more of a city code type of amendment rather than zoning standpoint.
And we did talk about that, and I think that the gist of the council was treat it like alcohol.
Sure.
That was, I mean,
Well, I think it's tobacco, not alcohol, so like, I believe you can smoke in a park, you can't
Can't drink it.
drink in a park. If I remember
Well-
correctly.
yeah, I guess, just, well, then that confuses me. I guess it's been a few months since we had that conversation, because smoking isn't gonna get you tuned up. Like, I mean, there's a reason why we don't allow alcohol then, right? And I guess I'm still confused by that, because people do, well, I won't get into that, but, I mean, to me, you have the same issue as you do with alcohol.
We have both issues.
Well,
That's
you
the
kind of have
thing,
both issues.
Because you
yeah.
have the smoke, because if you're drinking that, and I'm next to you having a burger, the fact that you're drinking does not affect,
Yes,
But
that's
if
true.
you're smoking and I'm trying to have a burger, I can smell your smoke and it affects that.
Yep.
So this is both things. It impairs your judgment,
Yep.
and it also pollutes the air around you, so it has both issues.
So maybe the answer here is conditional use permit,
More Cs.
just to make it more restrictive.
Or to give us more control
Or
as we
not restricted,
actually have
yeah.
to deal with this the first time.
Yeah, yep.
Case by
And then
case
we-
basis.
Yeah,
then.
if we have to adapt, we adapt.
And that's, yeah.
Well, this is our first stab at it, right? Like, it will change. As
Yes.
everyone figures out what they're doing, this is gonna change. So I'm fine with starting out with more Cs, giving us, so that we can know more, we can have, not necessarily control, but just be more involved in the process and figure out where the sticking points are gonna be as it develops and as people come in. And then we can always come back and adjust it and say, you know what, it's been a complete non-issue. There's no reason for this to be this restrictive. Let's back it off to a P. But I'd rather start with a C.
Well, and keep in mind, right, this is one business we're talking about.
Well,
Minimum.
that's up
We're
to the
allowed
city
to have
to, that's up to
minimum
the
one.
city council
I mean,
to
Have to have a
determine.
minimum one
But
if they
a
count.
minimum
A
of
minimum
one.
one.
We should, I mean, no different than the buffer setbacks, we should, after we wrap up
Yeah.
land uses, we should
Yep.
see if people have opinions on that
And-
and let it out.
That's what I'm getting at, is it could be a conditional use permit all across the board, and we may only see one or two applicants in the next year or two, and it's not an issue.
We don't have the rooftops, we need more pot smokers if they're gonna have more cannabis places.
And we need retail.
We need retail,
We
right?
don't have a building.
You know, most of my other questions here was just like when we had things like cannabis transporter, it's like, are we really need to focus on, I'm just thinking of a delivery, it's like, I don't know why we need to focus on the zoning, so to say, where that building's located, because once that leaves their facility, you know, it's like delivering alcohol or delivering something else.
It's all packaged,
I don't
it's not
really
consumed.
Delivering
It's-
anything.
Yeah.
Right, that's why
Shouldn't matter.
I'm a little confused of why we have to
Yep.
call that side of it out.
Sure. And I think that to that point, the reason that I did include those types of uses is related to the state requirement of having
Yeah.
to, and like you guys have mentioned, it very well could never be the case that delivery service wants a standalone operation in town or something like that. But if someone did call John or myself tomorrow, they would be interested in understanding where they would be allowed, because they do have the opportunity to be allowed in every city in some capacity. And I think that that's included with the transporter. The transporting is probably going to be accessory to a wholesaler or a manufacturer or a cultivator or something like that. There could be likely that the cultivator or the manufacturer isn't going to third party hire out a transporter to get this stuff to retail locations. They very well might do that themselves. So
Right, and I'm just confused in how we're tying it to a property in a specific location with a zoning code.
sure.
Because it's gonna leave their facility, it's like, whether
So you-
it leaves with Peter taking it out the door or a delivery person.
Yeah, we still need to get I mean, I think of the transporter, is it like I think of like a garbage transfer station, or is it just like an Uber driver?
And we don't know that by
Or is it a
this
big box
definition yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a business operation.
It could be
Yeah.
a place where they load and unload, redistribute.
It could be a distribution facility,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
It could be, we're located along 94, distribution facility. We've got them.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
In
yeah.
our I uses.
So I don't know how this factors
Right.
into this, but I
I won.
attended a seminar for appraising marijuana,
reasonable.
cannabis
Permanent.
places.
Yeah.
It was like 3 years ago from other states, but the message I got from it is these people like high security locations, and they prefer little industrial buildings because they can control their security. They don't want a bunch of retail traffic. The people that come get it from them are gonna go get it regardless.
They're not
Like,
just gonna
they looked up
stumble
it on their
upon it,
phone,
right.
whatever, and they're gonna go get it. Or they have, and a lot of them have delivery services from there that deliver it to people.
Sure.
And so, I mean, when you think about these zoning codes, that's why I like that we're allowing a lot of this stuff. The retail, do we allow the retail in industrial? Let's see.
I did not include that.
No.
See, to me, in industrial, we do allow some retail. I forget the percentage.
Yeah, it's ancillary to a warehousing operation or something
Right,
like
but
that.
to me, that would seem appropriate, because there could very well be in a small industrial building, and it's
They
just,
got a little front shop.
yeah, they gotta, and they don't even.
Front shop's probably not the right word.
Oh,
And usually they don't have very little product on display
Sure.
because it's like secure.
Sure.
Like you're looking
Do
at
you want to add
pictures.
that as like an
in front of the
accessory
testing
use?
facility.
Yeah, I don't know. I
front.
think
I mean,
that,
not
just
in
I think that
front.
it makes sense
Yeah.
if we're gonna allow it, that we gotta let it be successful. So I think you could put a C in I-1 for cannabis
Yeah.
retail.
As a standalone, because just to be clear, those micro businesses and mezzo businesses that would be allowed in industrial would be that.
I'm with you there.
Would be that.
I don't
split.
know if they just sell it from there or they do other things in them, to be honest. So I don't know.
For the micro and mezzo
No,
businesses.
these little industrial buildings
Oh.
that they decide where the retailers and their customers usually come to.
Right.
I don't know if they're also cultivating in there or doing
Sure.
other things. I just
So,
don't
or
know.
what you're trying to say is the mezzo business is the description that he just gave of,
If someone wants to cultivate, process, and sell at the same
All
location,
three.
that would be the license they would be required to
Okay.
obtain.
Yeah, so I don't know, again, if they're just selling it there.
Right.
Or they're doing other things in those buildings.
I think since we allow retail in I-1, we should add it either as a C or an A being to one of the other
Yeah,
uses
to
that
I-1.
make sense to I-1.
In the event that
In the event that someone,
the state might allow a manufacturing place, and instead of having them go through the license for
Yeah.
a mezzo business or something, they just give them an endorsement for retail or something like that. You want to have that option for them? Sure.
I just think it's, well, and/or if they're not doing all of it, but they're doing some of it, that doesn't allow the mezzo business.
Right.
And then it also gives the option, we do have a fair amount of industrial, gives an option for a small operation to be there as a C, so.
And there are other things that might be considered as well that, again, would be probably reviewed by the attorney's office related to, are there size limitations to these facilities that you would look to see that are above what the limitations are for the state? And I'm not sure if that's something that the city can do, but it's something we could certainly look into.
Anything else on the table? Okay. Jump into
If you could put that setback slide up you have.
the
Sure.
the buffer.
So right now, in the ordinance you drafted, you're suggesting just 100 feet similar to alcohol.
Yeah, not necessarily
Or you're suggesting, but that's what's in there.
More so, that's kind of the jumping off point of here's what
Yep.
is normally what you'd see in the city code today.
I'm fine with that. So
100 feet's a joke, though.
I drew, but why make it different?
No. I mean, for schools don't bother me mostly because we only have one, and there's not any business nearby it. You know, maybe there'll be more in the future, hopefully. But
And those students are not going to be visiting one of these facilities? 'Cause of
They're gonna be doing the one at home.
Elementary.
They're gonna be doing the home one.
they,
Yeah.
For the plants.
they visit the restroom at the high school. They do.
And the other note that I'll mention too on this is that for businesses in the buffer requirements, if a facility is put up prior to a school or whatever may be included in these buffer requirements, comes in after the fact, that location is entitled to maintain their operation. They don't have to up and leave and find another location that's outside of the buffer requirement.
I would think like daycare facility, you know, is there any buffers for just like residential?
Even when you think of
neighborhoods or
500
something?
feet,
I don't
though,
know.
it's nothing.
I don't know. I mean, 100 feet doesn't even get you to the playground at Dehn
500,
Elementary.
if you had a daycare, 500 feet from that door is gonna get you out of the parking lot.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe into the
Yeah.
street a little bit. It's not like,
Well, and like I mentioned before, there are buffer requirements for commercial or industrial properties abutting residential that are already included.
Yeah.
Probably not to the extent of what is allowed here by statute, but there is that to go off of for.
Well, let's look at
I'm
a
not
town,
necessarily
town's
against-
development, right? Like if there's a daycare that gets put in there, can one of these things exist in that same retail area as the daycare?
I kind of view it as no different than a tobacco shop or an alcohol shop. So,
Okay.
They're still gonna get compliance checked, so I don't.
I mean, I get your point, but yeah, I kind of view it the same, and that's why if the alcohol is 100 feet, that's why I kind of feel like, well, if that's 100 feet. I do agree that 100 feet's nothing.
Yeah.
But I think your contention is any more than that's not really anything either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the only one that stands out to me that we may want to consider, and it's as we look at like the town center area that had been talking about last year with French Lake, and like 500 feet there from a public attraction, you know, that just helps it not be the front and center.
The
store.
first business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would
that's
agree with that.
kind of one of the ones that jumps out at me as more of a.
So in thinking, okay, so if we go to the slide with the Greek, was it Greek goods or whatever it is? So this is an existing store in Blaine. And other than guessing what they're selling, you really don't know it from the outside.
Yeah, they want to be discreet, so they don't have, they helps with security.
Yeah.
People find them online.
And then I think there is also a provision in there that mentions, you know, product can't be visible from the outside. That would be just kind of a standard rule for these brick and mortar stores. And regarding security, I've seen cities that do require extensive security from a zoning standpoint. In discussion with between staff, we've figured just as kind of a standard operation of these cannabis businesses, if the business owner wants to be successful in their location, they're going to take that upon themselves rather than having the zoning ordinance regulate that side of it.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think long term it's not going to be much different than alcohol. Like,
It's just new.
It's
you know,
new, yeah. It's new and it's different.
legal.
It's newly legal.
Right, yeah.
It's not new. It's newly legal. But like, I don't think long term, once everyone adjusts, I feel like it's going to be very similar to alcohol and they'll take the same things. But I would agree it should match what we have for liquor license and place like that. I think it should match. And if we don't think 100 is sufficient, then we should revisit that for liquor as well. But
Yeah, I think the primary objection, like you mentioned, that it's different from alcohol in that when it's consumed,
yes.
there is an impact to people around it. But selling it, locating a business to sell it, doesn't really provide any harm any more than an alcohol or liquor store would, or a smoke shop, selling cigars and cigarettes.
And Peter had a good point about the public park, because then people might buy it and go use it there, but still, if the
Still
max
not
by
allowed.
law is 500 feet, that's not very far to walk.
It's not very far, but I'm just thinking about like that
Visual
area that
disconnect, maybe.
we had done a concept plan for, and like, it just sets it off of the main road and puts it back further, and they're still gonna walk to it, it's just,
Well, it sounds like they're probably going to want to be off the main, like, they don't necessarily want to be front and center.
so.
The stores?
The stores
Yeah, no,
themselves.
they well, again,
So far.
keep in mind, a lot of them have went in when it's not allowed by federal rules and banking, so maybe and security issues, so who knows?
I'm also thinking like elsewhere that we have buildings already and this isn't an issue. I don't think anywhere, that 500 foot isn't an issue with any area we already have buildings. It's that area is the only one that
Something to keep in mind when
really
the town center gets closer.
Well, and depending on how large the town center area is for that zoning district, if it's small enough, it could be very well likely that, hey, this isn't the right area for it. We can remove it from the use table for that district.
And as far as the number of retailers or cultivators, I guess I'm in the boat that it probably doesn't matter yet. We're overthinking it if we try to say it's 3 or 2. Or,
Sure.
I don't think it matters.
Yeah, and the only thing that the state allows for setting a threshold is for retail. Cultivators and manufacturing and those things, we can't limit those within the city code, but the city code would have the ability to, if they chose to do so, set a limit on retail shops.
I guess unless someone's got something else to convince me, I guess I'm not sure why I see why we'd limit it.
We had 2 liquor stores, one went out of business.
Yes.
Yeah, the market's going to dictate it.
Yeah, we just, like we said, we don't even have the brick and mortar for them to be located in,
Raintree.
other than Raintree.
Or the new Sundance Woods pot district.
The new green district?
Sundance Greens.
Yes.
Good.
Tom was onto
Man,
Good.
that's going in the minutes. We're stealing that. It's going to be the first one.
Trademark it.
Do we want to limit
I think
the
a light
hours?
just went off in Tom's head.
I don't,
Well, the discussion on hours of operation for retail is really related to the licensing process. That would be established by the city code and not otherwise included in the zoning ordinance. But if, I would say, just like the buffer requirements for liquor stores and tobacco is specific to the city code, because this is inclusive of all the licensed businesses, it seemed like it would be more applicable in the zoning ordinance side of things. But that's certainly something for the city council to, when that city code amendment comes through for retail registration, to consider.
so, I think we brought up an interesting point earlier about going back to zoning, we may not be able to limit outdoor
Outdoor cultivation.
Is there something maybe to chew on? Is there an ag district that makes sense to allow it?
Outdoor cultivation.
Yeah.
Just to allow it or not.
To allow it or not allow it, right? I mean,
I guess I don't know. It's
cash crop, so it's
Yeah,
probably
it's a
no
crop.
different than an agricultural crop, I guess, when you think about it. Like, can we even regulate it, I guess is my question.
Right, well, and that's the other thing too, is the good side of this is that all of these businesses will have to go through a licensing process, being able to prove that they can meet the standards that have been established at the state level. So we kind of already have that floor to go off of, and to your point, there might not be a way that we would further kind of regulate outdoor cultivation in Dayton.
So what I'm hearing is I have a new farm plan.
18 acres.
Get rich.
Just keep the
It's
horses
like
out.
any market, though, that's what I learned in this other class
Let 'em
too.
graze.
Even before it became legal, the problem is that there's such a huge black market, it's everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
It's so oversupplied so quick, it's hard to make money.
I'm very much joking on that one.
People can't consume it fast enough.
And the separation between outdoor and indoor cultivation, again, was a public safety recommendation, and when I got the information back from the city attorney that we could possibly get challenged on that, it kind of comes down to perception of the ordinance of, hey, you're not allowing this, and it's like, no, we do allow it, it's just indoor and industrial, but then it's kind of a, you know, which way does the statute really, what's the real interpretation of it?
Well, and I think any outdoor cultivation of any crop, you want to protect your crop. You know, if the fear is somebody coming in, destroying it, stealing it, whatever, you're going to want to protect it. It doesn't harm anybody growing there, right? You know, it's...
And the state will be responsible for kind of, I guess, I'm blanking on the term, compliance checks for all of these licensed facilities aside from the retail. If the city takes on the retail registration process, they would be the ones that would conduct compliance checks to make sure that they're complying with city code.
Do we have anything else?
Got enough to go on for a draft ordinance?
I think so.
Really fine word.
This has been a great conversation going off of what we had as a benchmark. I think my guess is that an ordinance would probably be held for public hearing in November.
Yeah.
And it gives us the opportunity of, hey, if there's still outstanding questions that we want to bring forward to the boards and commissions, we could do so in October. One of the things that we could probably touch on in October would be the home occupation side of at least discussing the lower potency side of things, and whether that would be something that the city would be interested in kind of utilizing or not.
I think the one question I would ask is, and I don't know enough about it, but if you're doing it in your home, how do you mitigate the odors for your neighbors?
Right.
And do we want to get in the policing of that obviously if they've got a bunch of licensing and it's already covered by their licensing and someone inspects it, and I'm assuming the city, who's going to be inspecting these if there's complaints, the city or the state? The city?
Well,
From the home occupation side of
from the
things, it would
nuisance
be
part
the
of
city.
it, yeah.
Okay, so that's the one thing that's going through my brain, is making sure that that's mitigated if we're going to allow it, and not having to, constantly try to police it.
Sure. Yeah, and I think initially when I first put this together, I think I have a provision in there that prohibits licenses within ag and residential
Nice house
districts,
you're building right
limiting this to commercial and industrial, because that's really what the intent of the licenses are. Again, that's a great comment on.
All right, I think that concludes our new business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jump back up to page 1. All right, staff updates.
Right on time. So up and coming for October before we get to October. So the master plan open house will be Tuesday, September 17th, 6:30 to 8. We encourage all the planning commissioners to attend. This will be at the community center attached to Fire Station 1 in the village. So again, it's Tuesday, September 17th. We will mail out notices to property owners that are within that 1 square mile master plan area.
What time is the start again?
6:30. 6:30 to 8, and we'll have cookies. So looking ahead at the October Planning Commission, I don't know if these items will be on the agenda or not, but this is just what I'm anticipating, is for the Parkway neighborhood in Dayton Creek. Both these projects are in the southwest corner of the city. On the map, it'll be the green and the kind of the pinkish area, as well as possibly an amendment for Fisher Farm. So I don't know if that'll be October or November. And then going straight to the City Council will be the EAW for Dayton Parkway. That'll be on September 24th. And then the Met Council about 2 weeks ago came out with their policy statements for leading up to the 2050 comprehensive plan. Met Council will have a public hearing for those on Wednesday, September 25th, and so my goal is to bring kind of our reaction to the council on Tuesday, September 24th, just in time for the Met Council's public hearing. So whatever we come up with, this will be provided to the commission, but it will not go to the commission meeting. And that's all. I mean, we've got, I think we'll likely get a conditional use permit for an oversized garage, whether that's October or November. But that's everything that's in the pipeline right now. Questions? Everyone's awake?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion from Paul and a second from Nick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.